Greetings, greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Wonderful evening at this point. Either way, I hope it's beautiful. Today we're going to go over chapter 3 of Gyan Yoga. That's how it's pronounced apparently. Gyan, not Jnana. It's all good though. This is how we learn. So chapter 3 of Gyan Yoga is called sadhana of mahavakyas. Now we know that sadhana means your spiritual practice. Your sadhana is your routine, your dedication, right? What you do every single day. For some of us, we have specific meditations that we do each day that represents our sadhana, right? If you're doing physical yoga, asanas, and postures, hatha yoga, that would be your sadhana. Okay. In this case, Gyan Yoga is my sadhana because Gyan Yoga is about the exploration and the study of the mind and how it works in relationship with higher consciousness, right? Know thyself is the phrase of Hermetic philosophy that relates closely to what Gyan Yoga actually is. So it's called sadhana of the mahavakyas. Now, the mahavakyas are four lines, four precepts taken from the Vedas. And the sadhana of the mahavakyas is going to represent the study of the mind in relationship to those four precepts, those four lines coming from the Vedas, which is Brahman is the supreme consciousness, I am Brahman, and the other two, which we'll explore. So from duality to unity, which is the definition of yoga, management of the mind stuff, and unifying the individual with the macrocosm. So as you can see, it's red because Tuesday. The color of Tuesday is red. And as always, I appreciate you guys being here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Shout out to all my beautiful friends and family who are consistent in studying this information. So, peace, Mo B. Will Trent, congratulations and peace, my brother. You finally got this book. And you finally got some other things that you've been working on. Love to hear it. Peace. Who loves orange soda? Kevin Wise, peace. Al Dickey, peace. Cradle of Humankind, greetings all the way from China. Society Ejects, great to see you. Higher Understanding, peace. Nate Garcia, welcome. Zaire Anew, what's good, my bro? What's good? We Grow Natural, good evening. All right, I don't know if I said what's up to you, Moby, but I'm gonna say it again. Peace, Moby. All right, so let's go ahead and get started.
Y'all, give me a good month and a half. No loss of video. My legs right here gonna be like. My goal is to get bigger legs.
What's that sound effect again? Nice. Me too. Once I go to the gym. Eventually, we still have to go get that membership, right? All right.
Yeah, what the hell's your hold up?
Sleep. All right. So, of course, this is chapter 3. And let's see. Naturally natured, you changed your icon. No wonder I didn't recognize you. Peace. Infinite peace. All right. Let's get started. Flip the camera around. Light. Let there be light. There we go. Okay, so where are we? Okay, so page 38. Oops. 38 is where we are. Let's begin. Okie dokie. Sunshine Chick. Peace, peace. Okay, chapter 3. Sadhana of Mahavakyas. Frame Star. Peace and welcome. From duality to unity. The inherent faculty of budhi, or intelligence, is the catalyst which allows one to connect with one's inner higher nature. It is also the catalyst for the connection with the external material world, the world of the senses and sense objects. Yogis say that an attempt must be made to move budhi away from the material towards the transcendental. This movement of budhi from the material dimension of involvement and identification to a transcendental state of existence is the purpose of Jnana Yoga. So this won't be the first time that we heard this, because that's pretty much what this whole book is about. The first one that we read in January, the paths of poverty and nivritti. One path going towards the involvement with the world of the five senses, and one going away from involvement with the world of five senses. So what he's saying here so far is that bodhi represents intelligence, but not just intelligence. It also represents the aspect of our inner selves which have the capacity to connect with our inner higher nature. So he says it's the catalyst for the connection with the external world, and he says that an attempt must be made to move it away from the material world towards the inner world, the transcendental world, the path of nivritti. But he says that this movement of bodhi from the material dimension of involvement and identification to a transcendental state of existence, that is the purpose of Jnana Yoga. That's the purpose of Know Thyself. So keep that in mind. Know that Know Thyself is not about having a better physical life. Know Thyself is about understanding who you actually are and what you actually are beyond the physical. So the first point to consider is that bodhi is the link between the lower self and the higher self. Peace, Rana Leona. Rana Leona says, you know what, Travis, no flattery when I say this, just facts. I love you for this book reading. Here came right on time. Okay, going back to your other video. Peace, peace. Okay, so Jnana Yoga is defined by many as the yoga of inquiry, of asking questions. Who am I? What is my true nature? How can I discover that? How can I become established in that? It is defined as a process of inquiring and realizing what one is. This inquiry is not associated with material life. Rather, it is associated with spiritual life. So again, know thyself, that phrase, that motto, that axiom, it's not about know thy physical self, know thy ego, know thy personality. It's a process of inquiring what you really are behind all that. Not material life, but spiritual life. From the perspective of yoga, there are two forms of bodhi: the normal sensorial intellect and the special intuitive intellect. Intuitive, right? Intuition. The first is that which associates with the world and directs the mental forces to identify with the senses and sense objects. It directs the mental forces to crave and desire that which can presumably provide external happiness, fulfillment, and contentment. This search, involvement, or interaction of bodhi is external, right? The more bodhi becomes involved in the outer dimension, the more it becomes entangled in the web of maya and attachment. The mind becomes gross. The mind becomes extremely rajasic and tamasic due to the cravings that manifest through the influence of bodhi. So remember, of course, we learned about the gunas: tamas, rajas, and sattva. And he says here, the mind becomes extremely rajasic and tamasic due to the cravings that manifest through the influence of bodhi. And what do you say? I desire this. I want this. This is my need. All this is being told to you by your bodhi. You respond to those instructions by attaching yourself with sense objects. So remember also we learned about the antakarana, which is the four part of the individual mind, the inner tool. And in order of density, from subtle to gross, we start with bodhi at the top, which can be your link to understanding the higher aspect of your soul nature, or, like he said here in this last paragraph, or it can be used to entangle yourself more in the web of maya. Underneath that, you've got ahamkara, which is the ego, the attachment. Underneath that, you've got chitta, which is the mind stuff, that which we create our reality out of. And at the bottom, we've got manas, which is the physical body. Now, the physical body does have its own intelligence, obviously, right? You're not in control of blinking and heart rate and food digestion and all that other stuff. That's left up to the rulership of manas. So the body has its own mind. So what he says here is the manas, mind, only becomes the medium to connect you with sense objects and to motivate you to work towards the fulfillment of desires and attainment of sense objects. This form of buddhi is what you live with throughout your life, remaining engrossed and involved in the material dimension. Zanaya Stewart, good evening. Vincent L. Cristol, peace, brother, peace. Trendy Phillip, it's been a while, man. Peace. Stray Panther, good to see you, good to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We got 22 people in the building so far and only 18 likes. I need like 4 more people to smash that like button at least. You know why. When bodhi is involved with sense objects, the mind remains disturbed and desires continue to take birth in the mind. Desire, or vasana, has been called sagarbha, ever pregnant, as a desire always contains the embryo of another desire in it. Now again, this concept should not be unfamiliar, because what we learned previously in karma and karma yoga and some of the other texts is that when we talk about desire, like he said there, it's ever pregnant, right? Ever pregnant. So remember when I brought reference to this text here, what did we see? All right, so we were looking at karma. Yeah, karmic law. Okay, so that was on page 121. And what we learned about karma is that desire was constantly being born due to attachment. I can't find the exact, there it is. Okay, so we had this chart that we went through. By the way, this book is called Awakening the Life Force. It's actually out of print, so it's kind of rare at this point. If you can find it, This would be a great education on the different yoga philosophies. And it's actually an easy read. It's not a boring, bland book. It's very clear cut. But if you didn't see this page already, maybe you can screenshot it. But basically, it looks at the view of samsara and reincarnation and rebirth. And due to what has been imprinted on our deeper aspects in the subconscious mind, the samskaras. Remember, samskaras are deep impressions left on the subconscious mind that have happened in the past. So those deep subconscious impressions begin to build what we know as ego. And if those deep impressions are never harmonized, they will continue to impregnate our awareness with desires. And before we actually achieve what we desire, a new one is in the process of being created. So it's an endless cycle of rebirth. Even while we're alive, we're consistently chasing desires. That process doesn't end when the physical body dies. So what he says here is desire, or what they call vasana, has been called sagarbha, ever pregnant, right? Ever pregnant. As does desire always contains the embryo of another desire within it. In the womb of every desire is nurtured the seed of yet another desire. As soon as the first is satiated, the second replaces it. There is no end to desire. That is why desire always makes the mind tumultuous, dissipated, and disturbed. This leads to a search for peace, happiness, and contentment, so you may be free of that disturbed state. However, since your intellect is extroverted, the search for peace, happiness, and wholeness is in the external world. The search for peace, happiness, and wholeness is in the external world. Can you see how that might start to cause issues? Because the mind is always dissipated and scattered, its natural nature is to seek peace, happiness, and contentment so that we can be free from that disturbed state. But since the budhi, the intellect, is externalized, it's going to be searching for that peace and happiness in the outside world, which is literally impossible. Because you don't need to study a yoga book to know that you chase after something for so long, and even if you get it, you're not fully satisfied. You want something else now. That is an endless cycle. And that is the very root of karma and reincarnation. Reina Leona, thank you for that donation. I appreciate you. Vincent L. Cristol says, facts, the dead be going through the process of clearing blocks, aka purgatory. Right. And it's about balance. It's not about punishment or reward. It's about harmony. So as long as the inner awareness is out of balance, it has to manifest in order to balance itself. But the problem is, every time we incarnate into a physical body, we create more and more imbalance, more and more karma. So the process doesn't end until we finally come to realize this information and put it to work. Tales of Chrysalis, peace. Put my phone on vibrate here. Okay, so beginning of Gyan Yoga, observing the present. The role of budhi is much more than interaction with the world. It is the tool which can connect you with your own essential inner nature or spirit. A coin has two sides. When you look at the world, you're looking at one side of the coin. When you look inwards, you're looking at the other side of the coin. When you become one-pointed and quieten every kind of restlessness, whether physical, mental, or sensorial, you can look inwards. I'll read that line again. When you become pointed and quiet every kind of restlessness, you can look inwards. Okay, so you should know that when he refers to one-pointedness, he's talking about the concept of dharana. Dharana literally means one-pointedness, as can be seen by the red dot on the center of his forehead. Dharana means one-pointed concentration. For the most part, we spend our lives with our awareness scattered and spread out amongst all of our five senses and other things that don't have anything to do with us. But when you sit down and you meditate for real, you start to bring all that awareness to one point. And what you'll experience is that when your awareness becomes one-pointed, you start to see through a lot of the things that have been confusing you. Because the external world changes so frequently, with our awareness focused on the external world, the change begins to make us feel dissipated, scattered, confused. Nothing makes complete sense. Nothing satisfies us totally. But as he says here in this line, when you become one-pointed and you quiet the restlessness, you can start to look inwards. That is how the concept of Jnana Yoga developed. If bodhi is to be connected with your real and essential nature, you have to know what nature it is identifying with at present. Right? So again, if bodhi is to be connected with your real and essential nature, if that were to happen, you have to know what nature it is identifying with at present, right now. So just like a map, in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you're at. Both pieces have to be identified. Therefore, the journey into Jnana Yoga begins with observing the present, and not by thinking about an abstract idea or statement, which in your present state of mind does not have any relevance. He says the journey into Jnana Yoga begins with observing the present. Observing the present. Which is a big part of why I started to construct this diagram, right? Because the diagram that you guys have already illustrated yourself and taken the notes on is really referring to your present self, right? Your present self and all the factors that led to the building of the present self, which is who you were the past 10 years, your childhood, which is all congealed into its own trance state, right? And I said before that most people don't go deeper than this level because this is where all the traumas are stored within that childhood state. So most people, the influence of the situations that happened in this state influence who you are at present. But in order to even get here, you have to start by analyzing who you are right now. And by the way, this does correlate with the five senses, of course. This would represent the earth element at the top. This would represent the water element, especially since we know that the water deals with the subconscious mind. But if you were able to really tap in, right, they say go within, you would be descending into these deeper levels of self. Childhood to the hereditary nature, to the race, to the human race, to the planetary consciousness, to the angelic realm, the archangelic, and then finally to the God form, the archetypal form, which exists beyond the manifest dimension. It represents the Akash element of Chitta, of the memory. But you don't just jump here, right? Because this is abstract. You don't just jump into the God form level or the archangel level, right? You can try and you will have some effect, but before you can really tap into this level, you've got to start at the present state, which is who you are in this very moment. Not who you used to be, who you wish to be, but who you are right now. And then you can begin to unravel and unfold that through the process of self-analysis. So what did he say in that last line? He said, the journey into Jnana Yoga begins with observing the present, and not by thinking about an abstract idea or statement in which your present state of mind does not have any relevance. So that's the reason why you can't just jump into the deeper advanced levels of things, because your present state of mind won't be able to really extract what's hidden in the abstract archetypes. Make sense? Greetings, Anna. Anna asks, is it necessary? It depends on what your outcome is. If your outcome is to know thyself and to have an understanding of what and who you actually are, then yes, it's necessary. But if you're content with, experiencing the illusionary nature of the world of change, then I guess it wouldn't be necessary. Peace, Matthew Watson. Okay, let's continue. All good. All perfect. The practice of Gyan Yoga begins with meditation. It is a process which takes you through different levels of mental awareness and perfection of the behavior of the mind. People think that meditation is a tool to experience something deeper within. That is true only at a certain stage of meditation. In the initial stages, the role of meditation is to enhance the ability to control, manage, and guide the behavior of the senses, mind, intellect, and emotion. If you have this physical book, that is definitely something to highlight. I'll read it again. He says, people think that meditation is a tool to experience something deeper within. And that is true, but only at a certain stage of meditation. In the beginning stages, in the initial stages, the role of meditation is to enhance the ability to control, manage, and guide the behavior of the senses, mind, intellect, and emotions. The method of meditation has to take you through these different stages of enhanced awareness of the self before you can enter into contemplative meditation. So you have to start there. There's literally no way to skip ahead because the mind has to be conditioned in order to perceive the deeper aspects of self. Your mind has to be conditioned in order to be able to realize that. It has to be refined. So if the mind isn't refined, you're not going to be able to tap into the contemplative aspect of meditation. So it starts here. It starts with controlling the body, controlling the mind, controlling the intellect, controlling the emotions, controlling your thoughts. I've heard many people say that they didn't believe that they could control their thoughts. They thought that their thoughts just happened, both online and in person. Some people actually believe that they cannot control their thoughts, that they're a product of their environment. But if that's what you believe, then of course you're going to make that true. That also limits your future. You know, what can you really do if you don't even believe that you have control over the basic aspect of yourself, which is your thought process? Useless Familiar says, I'm sorry, I'm trying to learn the eastern side. Is Akash a form of Ein Sof or Kether? So a good way to think of it is, we know the four elements of earth, water, fire, and air, but there's a fifth element. The fifth element is that which the first four emanate out of. The fifth element is the potential state, the potential element. In the West, we call it spirit. But in the East, the word for it is Akash. It's almost like the prototype element. From it comes earth, water, fire, and air. It's almost like the seed element. The shape of it is actually an egg. Well, the symbol of it is an egg. But that's what Akash is, the fifth element, spirit. So, Gyan Yoga is contemplative meditation, but in the sequential process of meditation, it is a very distant step. It's a very distant step. So he says in the sequential process, we learned that in the last chapter. All right, does anybody remember what the 5 steps of the sequential meditation was? Tales of the Chrysalis says Akash and spirit are synonymous. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. But please remember, when we're looking at the Eastern tradition, none of this stuff was written in English. So the concepts that they talk about, it's not going to be defined as one cold, hard definition. The best way to define some of these terms is through comparison, correlation, and correspondence. So I can say that Akash can be compared to what we know of as spirit, but that's not the singular definition. A good way to think of Akash in the form of correspondence is to look at stem cells, right? When they do stem cell research, they take that stem cell, and depending on where they apply it, it can become any other type of cell. That's what Akash represents. The potential for earth, water, fire, and air is within Akash. And of course, we're not talking about physical earth, physical water, physical fire, physical air. We're talking about a behavior pattern of energy. So the behavior pattern of the energy that we term earth is very solid, immobile, It's very dense, right? It's the finalized aspect of a thing. Whereas if we were to talk about fire, that would be more of a transformative nature, an enlightening nature, an aggressive nature, an agitated nature, so on and so forth. Kev Rose, SS God, peace. So, the 5-step process that he mentioned before was, the first step is stilling the body. And we know that process is chiasterium, right? The stilling the body, that's the very first step, because if you're not able to still the body, you're not going to be able to do the rest of this contemplation, right? So chiasterium is step 1. When the whole body becomes steady and still, the mind follows suit. Okay, so step 2 after stilling the body is stilling the mind. You've got to control the thought process and make it still. So this takes a little bit of time to practice and figure out how to actually do for yourself. Step 1, still the body. Step 2, still the mind. Step 3 is to become the drashta, the witness, the observer. So once you've stilled the body and you've stilled the mind, you can now become the witness of the mind, right? Now you can start going deeper, because if you haven't stilled your body or your mind, you can't observe what's happening. Think of a pond or even a cup of water, right? That has like some stuff in it, some particles or like a mix or something. If it's shaken up and stirred up, all those particles are floating around in the water. You have to literally wait until all those particles settle down at the bottom in order to be able to see through that water clearly. Likewise, when the body is still and the mind is still, now you can look at the water of the mind without all the particles floating around clouding your vision. So still the body, still the mind, become the observer. Step 4 is when you truly analyze and begin to discriminate, right? What is useful, what is appropriate, what is not useful, what is not appropriate. You can start making changes based on that criteria. And again, you can't do this until the thoughts are still and the body is still. And then the final step is when you truly realize what the mahavakyas are talking about, which essentially states, I am God. God is all, including yourself. But you can't come into that experience until the body and the mind are still. As a matter of fact, that statement doesn't even make sense until the body and mind are still. Useless familiar. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for that donation. Useless familiar says, shout out to you, Trav. I'm so lucky to find this channel. I appreciate you. Well, look at that. Caesar finally found Anna. He's been asking about you for weeks. All right. Control yourself. So, Gyan Yoga is contemplative meditation, but in the sequential process of meditation, which I just went over, it is a very distant step. It is not something that you can start with, since you do not have the capacity to contemplate. And that's not a diss, right? But he's just talking about the whole structure of this process. You do not have the capacity to think in the correct manner due to the absence of Viveka, also known as discrimination. What will you think of? You will think of your normal thoughts. There will not be any change in your mental responses and behaviors, even in meditation, in the absence of Viveka and vairagya. So Viveka is discrimination, right? And in my words, it is the question of, is it useful? Is it appropriate? Everything that I do or don't do, I don't sit around and, go over endless thoughts of should I do it or could I do it? I ask 2 questions. Is it useful, and is it appropriate? If the answer is no, then leave it alone. And then he says the second aspect you need is vairagya, which is non-attachment, which means that these thoughts and these influences, these thoughts and these visions and whatnot don't influence your decision-making process, right? So that means if someone were to say a word or a phrase or anything to you that would potentially make you offended, The only reason you would get offended is because you are attached to the ideas associated with that word or phrase. Living in the state of non-attachment means that nothing is going to trigger you or offend you or make you upset. Why would it? Nothing's going to influence you to behave out of character. That's vairagya. So one of the things that you notice when going deep into meditation is that you start to enter the areas that I made on that chart over there, which includes your past experiences, your childhood memories, and different things of that nature. You might even be able to tap into the collective unconscious. And what's going to happen is you're going to observe experiences, situations, and potentials. And if you don't have discrimination, and if you don't have non-attachment, you're not going to be able to tread those waters very securely. You're definitely going to get distracted by something. Definitely. So Viveka and vairagya are essential. Let me know if that makes sense. All right, let's continue. The same thoughts that come to you now will continue to come even during meditation. The only difference will be that now you are sitting with your eyes open, and then you will sit with your eyes closed. The train or pattern of thoughts, emotions, sentiments, samskaras, and karmas will be the same unless you are able to develop the faculty of discrimination and non-attachment. So you might have heard us talk about how when most of the time when people say the word meditation or that they're meditating, they're not actually meditating, but they're rather just sitting down and thinking about the things that they always think about. True meditation involves becoming one-pointed with that which you're meditating on. It involves becoming one-pointed with what you're focused on, right?
I'm sorry. You could go. Okay.
So unless you've developed that capacity, then when you sit down, all that's happening is that the train or the pattern of thoughts, emotions, and sentiments, and some scars and karmas, they're all going to be the same. The difference is that your eyes are closed this time as opposed to open. So unless you're able to develop the faculty of discrimination and non-attachment, then you're not really meditating. So these are two attributes which allow the mind to disconnect from its intense and deep identification with sense objects. Because that's what's happening. Unless you learn non-attachment and discrimination, you are identified with the things that pop up in your head. So if you start meditating and you have childhood memories arise, or you have painful memories arise, or even pleasurable memories, you're going to attach to them. And that's called distraction. So that's why non-attachment and discrimination are very important. Because without them, you're going to identify with everything that pops into your head. And there are dangers to this, right? Because you don't want to sit here and contemplate Tifereth. Without non-attachment and discrimination, you're going to be thinking that you're Christ and you're here to save everybody, as we have seen many times. We Grow Natural says, I got the ear pods on, getting some things done. I'm listening. Awesome, awesome. I understand. But like I said, I appreciate that you're here. So, discrimination is a state of mind which allows one to know what is appropriate and inappropriate, what is true and what is untrue. Would you believe that most people don't have a very clarified sense of discrimination? Why? Because a lot of times we allow our emotions to influence our thought process and our behavior patterns, right? So please do your best to develop this. This is going to save you from most of the trouble that you experience in life. Most of the trouble that you get into in life, or most of the discomfort or the suffering, is due to having a lack of discrimination. Discrimination is a state of mind which allows one to know what is appropriate and what is inappropriate, what is true and what is untrue. This faculty, oh, and by the way, if you allow your emotions to rule your thought process, you will literally have an extremely difficult time deciphering between what's true and untrue. Because if someone manipulates your emotions, then you're just going to go with how you feel and not by what is actually true or untrue. Some people are experts at making a lie feel good. We all have experienced that. You won't be able to distinguish between what's appropriate and what's not appropriate if your emotions are ruling you. So this faculty is a must in order to progress in meditation. In its absence, you will not be able to know whether what you're experiencing is your own creation or the surfacing of something inherent from within. Man. Society Eject says it's like you're attaching to every thought that runs through your head. The human brain can process 11 million bits of information every second. Right. And see, that's very difficult for someone tapped into the hive mind because all you identify with is what's being sent to you by the collective unconscious. It's easy, but it's also not a path of growth. Alora says Antar Mona sounds like an appropriate meditation for Gyan Yoga. It is, absolutely is. Meditation, therefore, is not a process of sitting with your eyes closed, but cultivating specific areas of the mind, which allow you to know the mind and guide its forces. I don't know why I didn't highlight that, but that is a key sentence right there. Meditation, therefore, is not a process of sitting with your eyes closed, but cultivating specific areas of the mind, which allow you to know the mind and guide its forces. Those of you who have taken my class know that we go through specific meditations that allow you to refine specific aspects of your awareness. And it's not just something that's novel that you do for fun. You guys have noticed that it trickles over into your daily life and allows you to see your daily life from a different perspective. It's a lasting change because it's refining aspects of your mind. It says here, your mind has not been trained in this manner. Therefore, you're not able to focus, concentrate, or still the agitations of the nerves, the body, the senses, and the mind, or any aspect of your nature. Meditation has to be understood as a progressive sadhana, which allows you to explore your own potential and convert the normal, material, and gross budhi to wisdom and knowledge, which is expressed in life naturally and spontaneously. Aldicki says, Malcolm X said, never let your emotions outweigh your intelligence. Powerful quote. I might have to put that in a meme and post it. Let me write that down. Never let your emotions outweigh your intelligence. Yeah, definitely gonna post that. Thanks, Aldicki. Good night, Anna. Thanks for stopping by. So, practicing the sequential path. There are many people who meditate for extended periods of time over years. Despite their achievement in meditation, they are unable to control their responses and reactions, which are emotional, sensual, intellectual, and sensorial. Let me read that again. There are many people who meditate for extended periods of time over years. By the way, just meditating is not the thing that's going to bring you liberation. Meditation is a tool and a technique, but meditation in itself isn't the thing that saves you. It's what's happening while you're meditating, right? So meditation is a tool. The hammer doesn't build the house. It assists you in the process. It makes it easier, But the hammer doesn't build the house. The nails don't build the house. He says, despite their achievement in meditation, they are unable to control their responses and reactions, which are emotional, sensual, intellectual, and sensorial. Are you able to control your responses and reactions? This is what I'm talking about as far as being triggered easily or having non-attachment. As far as I see, there's no reason that a random stranger should be able to push you out of character, make you do something that would, be against what you stand for, i.e. getting into a verbal or a physical fight. I don't think there's anything that anyone can say that can push me to that point. That's having a lack of control of your responses and your reactions. So in order to have control over those responses and those reactions, you literally have to sit still and observe the self. Why am I behaving this way? What is causing me to react like that? Where do these triggers stem from? He says here, nothing changes in them except for the creation of a routine, sitting for 20 minutes with eyes closed once in the course of a day. Beyond that, there is no other change in the personality or the mind, as they did not follow the sequence. You gotta have a framework. They tried to practice contemplative meditation without covering the basics. It's like presuming that if you learn to read and write, you can acquire a degree. And we know that it's not even just learning to read and write. That's the first step. That's what gets you in the door. Likewise, meditation is a tool that can help, but it depends on your level of development. It is definitely possible to have attainments through meditation. It's definitely possible. There are no two opinions on that. However, just as one needs to work hard to acquire a degree and move from level to level of education, one has to practice sadhana, work hard in meditation also, right? For some reason, a lot of people see this whole spiritual work as different from any other kind of work. Right? Just because you know the rules of basketball, just because you can pick up a basketball, that doesn't mean that you're going to join the NBA and become a legend and make a bunch of money. Just because you know how to read and write, that doesn't mean that you're an author, and it doesn't mean that you have a degree. There are levels that you have to cross. There's refinement of character, refinement of behavior, refinement of thought process, right? Just because you know what money is, it doesn't make you a millionaire. There has to be levels and processes and understandings that have to be attained and acquired. Likewise with sadhana or spiritual practice. Just because you know the word meditation or you know some of these words, that doesn't mean you're enlightened. There are processes, there are graduations that have to be gone through. There's a gradual refining of the mind and the body. Oh, deja vu. Just as one needs to work hard to acquire a degree and move from level to level of education, one has to practice sadhana, work hard in meditation also. You cannot just close your eyes and enter into a contemplative state by thinking that you're doing so. Fire does not turn into ice just by thinking about it. That is why there is no advancement or achievement in such meditation. Sometimes it is enjoyable and sometimes frustrating. You feel you are not going anywhere. And then you come to the guru and say, "What is happening to me? I cannot understand it. I'm not progressing." The guru says, "Go back to the basics." Hearing this, you think the guru does not know anything about meditation. You're being asked to go back to the basics when you have been practicing meditation for 30 years, right? For 30 years. It ain't about the time invested, right? You'll hear people say all the time, "Oh, I've been studying this for 20 years, 30 years, 40." Even I say that. But I don't just rest on that, right? I provide so much more than that. But there's some people who stand on, "Yeah, man, I've been studying this for 30 years, man." That doesn't mean anything, because you could have been studying something incorrect for 30 years. What means something is the depth of understanding, right? Your personal depth of understanding. And that only comes through refinement. Understanding comes through refinement. There's a difference between knowledge and understanding. Knowledge is just data. Understanding is the process of synthesizing that data, refining your awareness of that data, connecting dots, realizing the patterns that are inherent within that data. That's called understanding. Just because you studied something for a long time doesn't mean you understand it. Chizek. Who Loves Orange Soda says there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Exactly. Lily June, peace, peace. Black Knight says, would non-attachment be not wanting to come back and reincarnate over again? That's actually attachment. That's actually attachment. Because to have this feeling of, I don't want to come back, I don't want to reincarnate, that is running from pain, right? See, attachment is the process of either running towards pleasure or running away from pain. Both of those are, one's positive attachment, one's negative attachment. It's called aversion. So if you're running from something, that's still attachment. That's not non-attachment. Non-attachment would be, it's not even your concern whether or not you're going to reincarnate or not. See, that's a different level of power. Because if you're running from something, that's fear. That's not strength. Rick Roster says, okay, so where are you at? You're teaching, but are you a master? Lasada Eject says this book is on our ass. Yeah, for those who can understand it, for those who can hear it. But like you said, you've got to be at a certain level to be able to, comprehend some of these concepts. Refinement. You know, there's people who have been on this book study this whole time and still haven't meditated, not once. Not once. I'm telling you, the only way to truly understand this data is by putting it into practice. Put it into practice. Yeah. I was surprised when I was informed of that, but, there's a reason. There's a reason. Trav, I don't understand why such and such isn't working out for me. Well, what do you meditate about? Well, I haven't actually meditated yet. I've just been studying so that I can get a good grasp on it. No, don't wait. Go ahead and start. That's the only way. That's the only way. So no shade and no shame. I appreciate you being bold enough to ask me about that and admit that. Thank you for being honest, but the answer to your question is to meditate. All right, let's keep going. That boy said, I ain't meditating yet. All right. Oh yeah, here we go. See, this right here is where it's at right here. Let's check this out. So, wow, this is exactly what happened. Yeah, he says, you feel you're not going anywhere, and then you come to the guru and say, what is happening to me? I cannot understand it. I am not progressing, right? The same should happen. The guru says, go back to the basics. Hearing this, you think the guru does not know anything about meditation. You're being asked to go back to the basics when you've been practicing meditation for 30 years. And see, what's happening there is you're leaving it in the intellectual realm, and you're not taking it into the abstract. You're trying to understand it on the surface without going deep with it. So look what he says here. This is the sentiment of all these people who are studying it but not practicing it. Look at what it says. That is everyone's shortcoming. You're unable to see or understand the need to follow a sequence. You think, I don't need to follow the sequence, I can jump ahead. Everybody thinks they're better than others, and they don't need to follow the basics. That is why, despite the inputs of spiritual traditions, people are not able to transform themselves. If you're not progressing, then it's probably because you're trying to skip steps. That, or you're not actually practicing what you're learning. It's that simple. It's that simple. Lily June says, I've been meditating much more lately. So happy about it. Feeling good. Excellent, Lily June. Good work. Black Knight says, meditate, don't medicate. Yes, sir. Man, I don't need to follow a sequence. I can jump ahead. And you know what? I can talk shit about that because I was like that too. You know what I'm saying? I was trying to skip ahead and just get to the deep stuff, the good stuff, the advanced stuff. But here's the thing that I missed. Even if I start trying to read the advanced stuff, I'm not understanding it because I haven't built a foundation. This is the importance of following the sequence, of trusting the process. You've got to start at level 1 because you're building a foundation. And what happens is if you try to jump ahead, you're going to encounter different concepts that you don't have a foundation to understand. It's impossible to try to learn about calculus if you don't understand basic math, algebra. That's why they teach it in a sequence. Same thing with all these people that are always asking me about the clip-off and doth. Don't ask me about the clip-off and doth if you don't know anything about the rest of the tree. The fact that you're so interested in the clip-off and doth shows a lack of understanding of the tree, right? Because the abyss, and the abyss represents the cosmic porta potty. That's where God's shit goes, right? Doth, we're talking about a barrier that you cross to not ever be a part of this anymore. Crossing doth means you're completely finished. And truly, that's not what you want, especially if you're asking that question, because you're trying to ask questions about how can I improve my physical life. Doth is not the answer to that, buddy. Likewise with the clip-off. The clip-off represents a surface level understanding of reality. And naturally, it's going to bring things that cause disruption. The clip-off is the furthest away from the light of reality. The clip-off is the furthest away from the light of reality. Get with it. Society Eject says, I realize, Travis, some people are scared to meditate because they are scared of themselves. I only can speak from experience. I used to be scared. Yeah, and that's another thing. Lily June says, right, so important. Reminds me to take it one step at a time. Exactly. Trinity Phillips says, LOL, clip-off is not this fun, cool time people think it is. Exactly. But you'd only know that if you've experienced it, right? I was like that too, and I tried to jump straight to the clip-off. Wasn't no fun. Alora says, there is something to having the capacity for meditation. I've been in a serious physical pain recently, and so meditation has been extra difficult due to the pain. It made me realize how others must feel. Yes, ma'am. The abyss. Straight Panther says people just want to dumpster dive and play with cosmic poo. You know, and maybe there's something deeper to that. Maybe that's what they actually want. Rick Roster asks, does it matter what Indian book I read? There's also Vivekananda, and don't say Niranjan or Nanda is better, you never met them. You can read what you want, man. The important thing is to understand what concept you're trying to dig into and find a teacher who's good with that. There's different paths of yoga. Currently, we're studying Gyan Yoga. Vivekananda has a book on Gyan Yoga, which is very good also. Depends on you, man. I see you coming in here with a little bit of attitude and asking me a question at the same time. I don't know how you think that's going to go, but pick one. The important thing is that you read it and practice it and actually do what is suggested in those books. Let's continue. So again, you think, I don't need to follow sequence. I can jump ahead. Everybody thinks they're better than others, and they don't think they need to follow the basics. That is why, despite the inputs of spiritual traditions, people are not able to transform themselves. I love it. The scriptures say that Vashayakara vritti, object-oriented inclination, has to be transformed, and the Brahmi vritti, spiritual inclination, has to be cultivated, right? So object-oriented inclination, that has to be transformed. And spiritual inclination, that is what we're cultivating. He says attainment of Brahma vritti is the purpose of Gyan Yoga. So the purpose of all this is to transform the object-oriented inclination into the spiritual-oriented inclination. That's what we're doing here. That is how know thyself is accomplished. Brahmavritti is the state where the inherent tendency to attach with sense objects is freed of the sense objects. The yearning attached to desires is freed of the desires. The thoughts that are attached with ambitions are freed from the ambitions. You see that? So it's not even about eliminating desire. You're going even deeper than that. You're going to the root of desire. I'm going to highlight that. I don't know how I missed it. I guess at the time I wasn't ready to understand it. He says Brahmi vritti is the state where the inherent tendency, so there's an inherent tendency to attach. We know that's part of ego. He says Brahma vritti is the state where the inherent tendency to attach with sense objects is freed of the sense objects. Where the yearning attached to desires is freed of the desires. The thoughts that are attached with ambitions are freed from the ambitions. That's what we're trying to transform the object-oriented inclination into. Non-attachment, literally. He says this is the first step. Thereafter, the process of thinking begins. After that, the process of thinking begins. A question arises. Who am I? People know me by such and such a name. I know that I am 5 feet and 11 inches tall. I know that this is my nature, my character, my yearning, my desire, my strength, my weakness. All these need to be understood in the process of thinking. So again, when I wrote that chart, that's where I started with who you are as far as on the surface. People know me by such and such name. I'm this tall. This is my nature, my character. You got to start there and dive into the why those things are true or not true. Tales of the Chrysalis says, I'm older now and it seems I don't drop down from knowing into the ego realm till 7 years ago, like pulling myself out of tar at times in this density. My studies have always come from within. Yeah, that's the process of the transformation. You slowly have to pull yourself out of that. Very good, very good. I already know all that, but what candle should I use? I already know all that, but what demon do I summon? Society Eject says, what book were we reading when they say you better have a framework fucking with Doth? LOL, they really don't want that smoke. I believe that was Ladder of Lights. Yeah, I'll have to go back and check, because that was a good quote. Page 150, Ladder of Lights, page 150. Hopefully I can find it here real quick, because I'm positive I highlighted it. I'm pretty sure it was towards the end, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'll have to look for it later. I'm pretty sure it was Ladder of Lights. But yeah, like he was saying, you have to have a framework when digging into this thing. 7-Eleven, peace, peace. Vincent Del Cristo says meditation is a technique to purify oneself. Learning the basics will help guide one from repolluting themselves. Yes. There is no point of the work if one still wants to be an ass. Are you really ready? Right, right. Beautiful stuff, beautiful stuff. Let's continue. So, freeing the object of desire from the desire, right? Glocky, you're absolutely right. The basics is a process. In the last chapter of this book, chapter 2, he goes over a 5-step process of tapping into true meditation. The first step is stilling the body. The second step is stilling the mind. The third step is observing what is happening in that space. So as your body is still and as your thoughts are still, there's a different quality of mind that you begin to observe. Because think about it, you're never still. Your body's never still and your mind's never still. So when you get into that state, just like if you drink alcohol and get drunk, your mind and your body are behaving in a different state. Likewise, if you sit still for an extended period of time and you still your mind for an extended period of time, there's going to be a different quality of mind. So step 2 is what people miss. Everybody knows that when you meditate, you sit still. But what everyone doesn't realize is that the mind has to become still as well. Because what the opposite looks like is you're just sitting still thinking about the stuff you always think about. So you're thinking about your job and your problems and your desires and all that. That's not meditation. So step 2 is to still the mind. Leave all that stuff alone and just be still. The third step is now becoming aware and analyzing and observing that stillness. Not analyzing the things that you're thinking about, analyzing that stillness. That's when you're going to be able to open the window and see inside. So yes, Glocky, that is the first step. Those represent the basics. And imagine if you skip that, if you don't understand that you have to still the body, still the mind, and then observe what happens there, to begin to separate what's useful, what's appropriate, and to understand the divinity that's within. If you don't understand that as the basics, you're going to sit still and you're going to think meditation is thinking about tomorrow's to-do list and thinking about this and thinking about that. Then you're going to try to jump into the more advanced meditations and you're going to misunderstand how the process works because you don't even have the foundation correct. Amber D, peace, peace. All right, let's keep going. So he says that this is the first step. Thereafter, the process of thinking begins. A question arises. Who am I? People know me by such and such a name. I know that I'm 5 feet and 11 inches tall. I know that this is my nature, my character, my yearning, my desire, my strength, my weakness. All these need to be understood in the process of thinking. After you have understood yourself in this manner, then the higher thoughts begin. After you've understood yourself in this manner, then the higher thoughts begin. Initially, if you try to catch a higher thought, you will not be able to do so, as the lower thoughts are more powerful, and they do not allow you to connect with the higher thought. That's exactly what I mean. If you don't understand that the mind has to be still before you can enter into meditation, you're going to think that meditation is just thinking about your day-to-day activities while you're sitting still. That's not meditation. That's thinking about your daily activities while sitting still. Good stuff. I've given the example of mantra japa. In the 5 or 10 minutes that it takes you to complete your japa, how many times does the mind wander away? And you guys know what mantra japa is, right? That's when you have when you recite the mantra 108 times, right? And the point is to focus on the mantra. That's the reason that we wear these things right here, so that you can count each one for each mantra. Om Namah Shivaya, 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 Om Namah Shivaya. But see, the thing is, naturally as a human, as you're doing that, if you're not focused on that mantra, your mind's going to start to wander. You can do the mantra and still think about other stuff. But see, the practice is learning how to stay focused the whole time on the mantra. Right? You don't want to let your mind slip into other distractions, because that's not meditation. That's just you thinking about stuff while you're supposed to be meditating. That's why it doesn't matter when people say, oh, I've been studying this for 20, 30, 40 years. It doesn't matter about that. Were you doing it correctly? That's what matters. I can say that I was studying this stuff for 20 years, but it wasn't until the last like 7 years or so that I was really getting on the path to studying this stuff correctly. So while that previous time, it did serve as a foundation for collecting data, but that doesn't mean that one understands the data. Society Eject says that's not meditation, that's concentrating on the bullshit even more. Man. And people want to call that meditation. All right. So I've given the example of mantra japa. In the 5 or 10 minutes that it takes you to complete your japa, how many times does the mind wander away? You have to pull it back again and again and connect it with the mantra. Therefore, first acquire a one-pointed mind. The attainment of Jnana Yoga will come later. That is why Dhyana meditation has been considered the method or sadhana of Jnana Yoga. And Tales of Chrysalis says it doesn't matter in any field, for real. Right. Even if it's somebody that says, I've been working here for 30 years, or I've been da-da-da-da-da, what matters is how clearly do you understand the stuff. Lily June says 108 times of chanting any mantra packs a punch if one can really focus. Right, and while that may seem kind of mundane, even the good Swami that wrote this book says that to this day he hasn't met anyone who's able to stay completely focused during the whole thing, which includes himself. So that should kind of put some humility on it. Some time, peace. Before cultivating a higher thought, understand yourself and get rid of gross conditions. Otherwise, a higher thought may come, but the gross thoughts will again drag the mind down to the earthly level. What's the Bible verse that talks about having new wine, but pouring it into old wineskins, right? There's a Bible verse that talks about you don't get new wine and put it into old wineskins, because the old wineskins are worn out. They're going to burst and crack, and you're going to ruin the new wine. Likewise, before cultivating a higher thought, you've got to understand yourself and get rid of the gross conditions. Otherwise, a higher thought may come, but the gross thoughts will again drag the mind down to the earthly level. Oh, y'all, I got a download. And they said that Biden is going to do this, that, and the third. No. Spiritual science has nothing to do with none of that earthly gross stuff. And if you have discernment, then you can see through some of that. You can see through the entertainment that is listed as spiritual. I got a download, y'all. They said that Joe Biden and Donald Trump. That's not a download. That's called a thought, an idea, a wish, maybe. Thank you, Society Ejects. The verse is Matthew 9:17. He says, neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the wine runneth out, and the bottles perish. But they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved. That's the importance of purifying the self through sadhana. Because yeah, you can still access some of this higher information, but the problem is, if the inner mind isn't cleansed, you're going to receive that higher level information and you're going to corrupt it with ego. Like I said earlier, somebody might come into the experience of Tifereth, right? But because the ego and the inner mind is still corrupt, you're going to think that you're Christ. You're going to think that you're the one that's here to save the world, not realizing that this is a universal archetype that always exists. Salvation is always around the corner, not at a specific date. Christ isn't coming back this week, next week, the year 2023. It's always at any given moment, right? This is eternal stuff. But if you still got this ego situation going on, you're going to perceive this and try to apply it to your current state of mind. And that's what you'll see with a lot of people who start getting into the more advanced spiritual stuff, but then they end up going kind of off the deep end, right? Because that shows that a level of their ego wasn't purified, and they're taking the stuff personally. They're attaching themselves to these eternal concepts. So you'll have somebody that starts off by talking about, the mythology, and after a couple of years, they're saying that they're the savior from some other dimension or planet coming to save all these people. That's an example of new wine being poured into old wineskins. You gotta check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because not meditating is bad for your health. 7-Eleven says, talking about ancestors said and God said. Nah, that was your mind. Right. And discrimination and non-attachment helps you see through that. Grape dimensions. Alora says, so this is where the confusion comes in, because it's a question of whether you have a thought or higher intelligence. Right. Tales of the Crystal says, that explains my roommate. No joke. Yeah, and it's very difficult, because once a person reaches that level, it's extremely difficult to bring them back, because they literally they take these concepts to apply to themselves. Now they think that they are the embodiment of these things. And even if that was true, you're working with a type of information that is pretty much useless on the mundane realm, right? Like I said last night when my cousin came over and we were having a deep discussion, it really doesn't matter if I'm an incarnation of Vishnu. What am I going to do as an incarnation of Vishnu here in Georgia, right? I'm still paying bills. I still have to do this, that, and the third. I still have to eat food and push it out. You know what I'm saying? What does it matter? That information is not useful on the lower levels. That information is useful on the higher levels. But if you take it literally and identify and attach with it literally, it can start to make life more difficult than it needs to be. Lily June says, so Jesus really is always coming soon. I mean, the sun is always about to rise, isn't it? The inner reality is cyclical, not linear. We're taught of life as a linear thing. We're taught that life is adding one day onto the next day, right? But in truth, life is cyclical, which means it's happening as a pattern. It's a system. And if you want to change something, it's not about adding it step by step. It's about adjusting what's in that circle. More on that later. Greetings, Hikate. Hikate says, I am getting my book tomorrow. Perfect. Tales of the Crystal says, yes, and he's a beautiful soul. Send him love. Absolutely. Absolutely. Society Eject says, beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. 1 John 4:1-5. Exactly. That's the definition of a false prophet. A false prophet is not somebody saying some stuff that you don't like. A false prophet is somebody who probably has tapped in, but because of their ego attachment, they're misinterpreting it. And they're teaching a philosophy that was transcendental, but now it's turned mundane. That's what a false prophet is. Not somebody saying something that you don't agree with. Tales of the Chrysalis says, there's been lots of karmic healing since I've been here. That's what happens when you're on the right path. Aaron Morgan III, peace. He says, to assist oneself in calming the mind, use pranayama breathing exercises to balance the nadis, Ida and Pingala. Yes, sir. We Grow Natural says there are so many false prophets. Yeah, there is. But once again, as you start developing that discernment and that non-attachment, you can start to point them out immediately. Rich Nigga says, I think people can read Western world spiritual books and still meet high levels of enlightenment. It's the same shit. Absolutely. But what's more important than the book or where it was written is the level of understanding that the reader has. Because when you get to a certain point of understanding the different patterns that exist, then yes, you can start to identify them in books that aren't even spiritual. Even on our live streams, MC Maestro constantly refers to these finance books written by Kiyosaki or Donald Trump, or even the ones that I love by Brunson. There's a lot of spiritual material in there, but you're not going to see it if you're not a spiritual person. So yeah, it doesn't really matter the type of book. It matters the understanding level of the reader themselves. I like that. Vincent O'Crystal says, pranayama, mantras, and guided meditations are great techniques to use for beginners. The mantras aren't evil. I feared mantras in the beginning. When your shit surfaces, it's your shit. Exactly. Not the demiurge, not some evil person. It's you. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. False prophets. Funny stuff. Very funny stuff. And it sucks because a person that doesn't know any better, they get swept away by the personality and the character of the ego. They get swept away by the character thinking that it's a spiritual thing, not realizing they're getting wrapped up in foolishness. But that's karma too. To get sucked in by a false prophet, that's part of your karma. False prophet. That's hilarious. I'm gonna try my best not to name any names. You guys can do that though. All right, I'll go over this one more time. Before cultivating a higher thought, understand yourself and get rid of the gross conditions. Otherwise, a higher thought may come, but the gross thoughts will again drag the mind down to the earthly level. Take the example of a visit to a temple. When you go to a temple, you are required to leave your shoes outside. Now, when you bow before the deity, the higher thought is the connection with the spiritual principle there, but the lower thought is that of your shoes. You're bowing your head before the image in the temple, but the image, symbol, and memory on your mental screen is that of your shoes. Damn. Instead of the feet of the deity, you're actually thinking of your shoes. Am I wrong? That is what happens. That is your average state of mind. A useless thought will divert the mind from its focus. What kind of thought? A useless thought will divert the mind from its focus. Compared to a pure thought, a useless thought will more easily divert the mind. Absorb that, because that is important. That is why in the system of Jnana, the first step is restraint of the senses. We learned about that in a previous book. I believe it was Karma and Karma Yoga. Yep. The first purpose of meditation is stillness of the senses. This sequence of meditation has to be grilled into everyone. Grilled chicken style. So let's go back over this real quick, because this happens to all of us. He talks about an example of somebody visiting a temple and you're required to leave your shoes outside. So he says that when you go inside and you bow down before the deity, the higher thought is the connection with the spiritual principle. Right? The higher thought is focused on the deity, focused on devotion, worship, and connection with the higher self. That's the higher thought. But the lower thought is thinking about your shoes. Oh, I left my shoes outside. I hope nobody steals them. I hope nobody steps on them. I just bought them. You're thinking about this mundane stuff. So here's non-attachment and discernment. When you're doing your meditations or your mantras, A part of you is focused on that higher aspect, and another part of you is focused on earthly mundane stuff. But what's the percentage? What's the percentage? So you can be sitting there meditating on something divine, but how much of you is focused on other stuff? But see, you won't recognize that unless you sit down and examine the process of what's going on. Metacognition is thinking about how you're thinking. That's actually coming out of yourself and observing yourself. That can only happen once you still the body and once you still the mind. Then you can observe. But if your mind isn't still, you're thinking about those shoes instead of being focused on that deity. This is something that happens to every single person, even myself. But what's the percentage? How much are you focused on that external, and how much are you focused on that internal? And are you able to recognize when your mind is drifting, and are you able to bring it back? That's what we're actually doing in meditation. Not simply sitting still, but keeping the mind one-pointed in your focus. Let me know if you get that. Let me know if you don't. Is it useful? Is it appropriate? Peace out, Cesar. Have a good night. Society Eject says, LOL, sounds like when I used to meditate in the dark, I used to think that somebody was going to run up behind me. Yeah. And notice what he said here. He said, a useless thought will divert the mind from its focus. So how can we be focused if we're also worried at the same time? This is training. This is training of your inner self. Going through these experiences, training the mind to stay focused. Good stuff. 711 says, I find myself doing that often, monitoring my mind as I meditate. Right. Stillness of the senses. Okay. So, here we go. Step 1, right? Stilling the senses. The first stage of meditation is control over the senses and the sense organs. So this is the important part. Please pay attention. Now we're talking about the foundation and the basics. He said without the foundation and the basics, you're not going to be able to do the advanced work. Even if you skip ahead to the advanced work, you're going to do it incorrectly because you don't have the framework. Framework is entirely necessary because it enables you to truly understand what it is that you're doing, as opposed to being a false prophet, which is someone who can receive the information, but they're going to corrupt it because ego has way too much control over the decision-making process. So instead of experiencing Christ consciousness, now you start to think that you are Jesus Christ, come back to save the melanated race. Obnoxious. All right, number 1. Peace out, Caesar. Have a good night. Stilling the senses. The first stage of meditation is control over the senses and sense organs. That is the first condition or requirement of meditation, developing the ability to stop the senses from moving and holding them fixed in one point of awareness or attention. This is known as what? This is known as what? This is known as chiastherium. When the body becomes steady and still, the mind follows suit. He says here, developing the ability to stop the senses from moving and holding them fixed in one point of awareness and attention, this is known as chiastherium. To come to this point, you have to have a good understanding of how your body responds, how the senses respond, and how the mind responds to the senses. You got to have an understanding of that. To come to this point, you have to have a good understanding of how your body responds, how the senses respond, and how the mind responds to the senses. Only then will you be able to stop the movement and identification of the senses. Certain practices of Raj Yoga may be used. For instance, the practice of Pratyahara allows you to disconnect from the outer world, the outer involvement and association, and become fixed internally within. Such sensory stillness must be attained in the initial stages of meditation. This is the ABCD of meditation. He's telling y'all this is the basic stuff right here. This is the foundational, basic, elementary stuff right here. So how are you going to skip this and talking about you're channeling the Pleiadians? How are you going to skip this and talking about you're working with the Klipoth? Or you're channeling the ancestors or whatever? So it says Pratyahara allows you to disconnect from the outer world, outer involvement and association, and become fixed internally within, right? The ancestors don't exist on the outside. So how are you going to talk about ancestor stuff if you don't even know how to truly become fixed internally within, right? You can't physically see no Pleiadians and Arcturians. So how are you going to do that if you haven't realized how to go within? You know, like, make it make sense. This is the ABCD of meditation. Years ago, when I used to travel to different countries and give meditation classes, people would come up and say, Swamiji, today for the first time, I felt my big toe. I found that amusing, but it was definitely an attainment for them. They would say, Swamiji, for the first time today, I became aware of my body. I became aware of my knee. I visualized my ankle. This process of knowing oneself is not just physical, but also sensory. It's also sensorial. You have to become aware of the exchange of the senses with the world. Only then will you be able to quiet the senses. Did you catch that? Imagine, as much as you think you know about yourself, imagine that you come to find that what you know currently is only a fraction of the reality. And imagine attaining an awareness of an expanded realization of what you actually are. These people said, for the first time I felt my big toe. For the first time I visualized my ankle. While that sounds kind of silly, what kind of experience did they have to have to be able to say that? What did they understand previously? Tales of the Chrysalis asks, please someone tell me the book again. So this book is called Gyan Yoga, and it's by Swami Niranjan Ananda Saraswati. There's also a Gyan Yoga written by Swami Vivekananda, which is a good one also. And there's a few others, but this is the particular one that we're studying, mainly because we are studying the system that is proposed by the Bihar School of Yoga. So just like the young man asked earlier, there are different books on this subject. None are necessarily better or worse, but since we're talking about a system, this particular system is the one that we are within. Well, Trent says we only on the 4th month, y'all. Oh yeah. This one will be next. So if you haven't already, you want to go ahead and grab this one to be prepared, because I know a lot of people are just now getting their copy. But when we finish this current one, we're diving right into this. This is actually the advanced level stuff. It's so advanced that it has to be presented in a basic way. How advanced? What do you mean by advanced, Trav? This is compiled from lectures given to postgraduate students. Not even students, but students who've already graduated at in yoga philosophy at the Bihar School. So this is literally the advanced stuff. This is what we'll be getting into next month. So please go ahead and get your copy. You don't want to get behind on that one. For sure. Oh boy. Oh boy. Straight Panther asks, so that's like actually hearing the voice of your intuition instead of just feeling it. Yes, in a manner of speaking. And what's actually happening is that your awareness is becoming more and more refined. So yeah, of course, you've got an awareness of your intuition, but what happens is it's very dense, very gross, and it's easy to miss. It's easy to dismiss as one of your other thoughts. But the more refined that you become in your senses, you'll start to know clearly what intuition is. And you'll be able to distinguish the intuition versus your average thought. You'll be able to distinguish it because you've refined your awareness of your thoughts. So imagine a more refined awareness of the body itself. And this is what Hatha Yoga teaches, a refined awareness of the body itself and the mind. Okay, let's continue. So, first one was stilling the body, stilling the senses, right? And I think that's pretty clear, stilling the senses. Number two is stilling the mind, right? So this is going even deeper in what we just read about in the last chapter, stilling the mind. Then you come to the next stage, stilling the agitations, fluctuations, and modifications of the mind. Ch3. The agitations and fluctuations of the mind have to be known, as they are subtle and intense and can prompt you to act in a particular manner. This management of the mental vrittis and isolating the mind from its sources of pain and pleasure, happiness and suffering, and giving it the experience of total peace, harmony, and equilibrium is the focus of the second stage of meditation. So you're stilling the mind, not only stilling it from running from pain, but you're also stilling it from running towards pleasure. You're stilling it from being attracted to happiness and running from suffering. Do you notice the two extremes here? So it isn't about love and light. It's not about just getting happiness, just getting pleasure. It's about balancing the mind so you're not running from or running towards anything. Now, what happens is when you stop that process of running and chasing, you begin to give the mind an experience of total peace, harmony, and equilibrium. So it's not about running towards happy thoughts. It's not about running away from painful thoughts. It's about stillness. So that's the focus of this second aspect. Slowly and gradually, the mind is connected and fixed on the object of concentration, whether symbol, mantra, or breath. So when you're meditating, there should be an object that you're focused on, and it could be a symbol, right? It could be a symbol, a yantra, as they say. It could be a mantra. It could even be your breath, which is probably the best way to go. Focus on the in breath and the out breath. Tales of the Chrysalis says, I just got what happened with that drop down. I was so internal before. I described the feeling after as being pulled outside of myself. Very affirming. That's the point you made, I believe. Yeah. A refinement of the self allows you to experience an expanded conception of the self. Slowly and gradually, the mind is connected and fixed on the object of concentration, whether symbol, mantra, or breath. You know the story of Guru Dronacharya's test of his students, the Kaurava and Pandava cousins. One by one, he called each student and gave him an arrow. Y'all who have this book know this story already, right? Rich Nigga asks, how do you focus on a symbol with eyes open and get it in your unconscious? And that's part of the first process. You stare at it, you memorize it, you get it into your mind, and you close your eyes and you replicate it with your inner eye. So the point of staring at it with your open eye is to get it into your inner eye. You can do that gradually. Of course, if you don't know how to do that, you're not going to be an expert the first time. So you can look at it for a while, close your eyes, and try to replicate it. This is the same exact thing that's going on in the Cyclomancy book, Basic Magic, all these other books that everyone talks about. One of the first steps especially in cyclomancy, he asks you to visualize an apple because it's simple, it's easy. Anybody can do that. We've all seen apples before. He says visualize what it looks like. Imagine how it feels, the smooth texture. Imagine the sound when you bite into it. What you're doing is you're starting to refine your inner senses, your inner sight, your inner sound, your inner taste. And as you practice doing that, you actually get better and more intense in the awareness of these inner senses. That's how you get it into your unconscious. Amber D says, so when I'm feeling really good vibrations through my body, is that good to keep it up or should I stop it? It feels really good though. It depends on your intent. Is your intent to sit still so that you can feel good? If that's the case, then that's probably not the best way to go about it. Now, just because it happens, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Just don't expect that to happen every single time. The point of meditation is not to feel good and feel good vibrations. Although that can and does happen, that's not the point. So don't get stuck on that is the basic thing. Don't get stuck on that. But yeah, that book I mentioned was Dharana Darshan, which we've gone through and referenced several times. But in the beginning, he tells the same story that we're about to go through right now. So what he says here is, one by one, he called each student, gave him an arrow, and said, there's a clay bird on that tree. You have to shoot the bird's eye. When the student strung the bow and took his aim, the guru asked, what do you see? The student replied, I see the tree, I see you, I see my cousins, I see the sky. Dronacharya said, put down your bow and arrow. There were 105 brothers. To 104 of them he asked, put down your bow and arrow. Or he said, put down your bow and arrow. At the end came Arjuna's turn. He also strung the bow and was asked the same question. He replied, I see the eye of the bird, nothing else. Dronacharya deliberately quizzed Arjuna. Do you not see the tree, the leaves, the sky? Arjuna replied, no. Dronacharya said, shoot the arrow. The arrow went straight and hit the bird's eye. Bird's eye. This is one-pointedness. Closing the eyes and separating yourself from the world is not one-pointedness, right? The one-pointedness is seeing only what it is that you're focused on. Notice how the other brothers, they're talking about, oh, I see the tree, I see you, I see that over there, I see this, that, and the third. Their awareness is scattered. It's dissipated. Arjuna passed the test. All he saw was the target. All he saw was the target. That's one-pointedness. Closing the eyes and separating yourself from the world is not one-pointedness. Even an ostrich buries its face in the sand and thinks that no one is able to see it. You practice jnana in the same way. You close the eyes and think that you've left the world behind. You cannot lose the world by closing your eyes, but remaining one-pointed, even with eyes open, is real meditation. Check your definition, right? A lot of us think that meditation is sitting down with your eyes closed. No. Meditation is when you're able to achieve one-pointed concentration. That is when you are freed of external objects. So that would explain why meditation might not be working for you, because you're probably not focused on one point. There's a story about Shukadeva, son of Rishi Vyasa. He was sent to the court of King Janaka by his father. Here's Niranjanananda, the author of this book, and his guru, Satyananda. Upon arriving there, he found the court in progress, in all its opulence. Shukadeva said to Janaka, my father has sent me to you for knowledge, but I don't understand what you can teach me. You're a sensualist. Your palace is equipped with every kind of comfort. Dancers are performing, musicians are playing, the kingdom is being run, riches are coming in, wealth is being distributed, every worldly activity is going on. What will you teach me? The king said, look, I am busy right now. Why don't you come a little later? In the meantime, you can have a tour of the city. Shukadeva agreed and prepared to leave. Oh, I love this part. The king said, "Wait a moment. 2 of my bodyguards will accompany you." Check this out now. So this guy is trying to understand enlightenment, right? He's the son of a rishi. He's the son of a awakened seer, right? So his father knows ultimate reality. He's been studying this stuff and he understands it. His son, however, he's trying to teach him, but his son's a little hard-headed. His son is like a lot of these people that we see online. Oh, I already know all that. I already know all that stuff about yoga, Trav, but what candle do I use? I know all that stuff, but what demon do I summon, right? This represents this kind of person. They think they know it all, but in actuality, they don't know anything. So he says he sent his son to the court of King Janaka, right? Now, King Janaka, he's got this palace full of, he's got women dancing everywhere. He's got entertainment everywhere, the best kind of food. He's got people doing all kinds of stuff. Money's being made. It's an awesome place to be. I guess maybe like Las Vegas or something. So the son gets there and he's like, "What can you teach me? You got all this stuff going on. I don't understand what you can show me about enlightenment. You're a sensualist, right? Dancers are performing, musicians are playing, the kingdom is being run, riches are coming in, wealth is being distributed. Every worldly activity is going on. What can you possibly teach me?" So the king says, "Look, I'm busy right now. I don't have time for this foolishness. Why don't you come back a little bit later? In the meantime, have a tour of the city." So the guy's like, "All right, yeah, I can do that." I know all that yoga stuff, Trav, but how do I get money to pay for gas? I love it. I love it. I know all that, but I need to pay rent next month. So he says, "Yeah, take a tour of the city. But wait a minute, I'm going to let 2 of my bodyguards accompany you." So, of course, he's going to feel like he's big time now. He's got 2 bodyguards walking through the city. He has no idea what's about to happen. So, 2 of my bodyguards will accompany you. Shukadeva was very happy. For the first time, he was going to be escorted by bodyguards, Z category protection, right? The king said, "Just one more thing. You have to put a vessel of water on your head and then tour the city. If even 1 drop of water spills out of it, my bodyguards will behead you. Now go." Oh boy. So yeah, take a tour of the city. 2 of my bodyguards are going to come with you. By the way, put this jar of water on your head, and if a single drop spills, my bodyguards will cut your head off. Peace. Imagine that. Imagine that. And Rich Nigga says, that's real, can't knock him, that rent gotta get paid. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not even the fact that rent has to be paid, it's that beginning part they always say. I already know all that stuff, Trav, but how do I do this basic thing? Which inherently shows that that's not true, because if you already knew all that stuff, then you wouldn't be asking that basic question. You feel me? Likewise, when he comes to this king, he's like, "What can you possibly teach me?" He's missing the point because he's getting distracted by the surface level. So, Shukadeva left. A celebration was underway in the city. Drums were beating, public criers were shouting announcements, flowers were raining, perfume was being sprayed, incense was burning, people were dancing. The shops were selling sweets and delicacies, children were playing. For 4 hours, Shukadeva toured the city and then returned to the court. Carefully, he put the vessel of water down from his head. Janaka asked, "So, did you tour the city?" "Yes," replied Shukadeva. The king quizzed, How did you like the city? How were the decorations? How were the celebrations? Did you see everything?" Shukadeva said, "What are you saying? I saw none of that." The king said, "Then what were you doing for 4 hours? Were you not aware of all the activity that was going on around you?" Shukadeva replied, "No, I was not aware of anything. You had placed such a condition that I could only be aware of the vessel on my head and making sure that no drop spilled out of it. I did not see anything else." Janaka said, "You have received the learning that you came for. Now you may go." Shukadeva was stunned. What do you mean? Or he asked, what do you mean? The king said, I told you what I had to tell you. You can be free from the world even while you are in it. Good story. I like that one. I perform my work as a duty, but I am not attached to it. Look above my throne. This is what the king is saying now. Shukadeva looked and saw several spears hanging by a single thread of horsehair. Surprised, Shukadeva said, aren't they dangerous? The king replied, they would seem dangerous to people, but I have them there so I may remain aware that a spear can fall on me at any time. I always undertake my activities with the awareness that this may be my last moment, and I never leave anything for the next day. All those people asking, how do I not reincarnate anymore? What demon do I use? Everybody wants to tap into deep stuff. But how many of those people are willing or ready to live at this level, right? None. Because the fear of death is so strong. I already understand all that yoga stuff. No. So this is also a good story that shows that it's not even about the external. It's about what's going on the inside. Thus, Shukadev received 2 lessons in one. The first lesson, if you can remain one-pointed even while living in the world, it will not influence you. And 2, never procrastinate. This is the second state of Jnana, in which the mind has been caught or restrained. When the dissipated thoughts, emotions, and tendencies are slowly quietened in the second state of Jnana, then follows the third state. So right there, is it useful, is it appropriate? The mind must be still and focused on one point. The same exact way that Shukadeva had to walk through the city with that jar of water on his head. He didn't care about the strippers twerking. He didn't care about the artists performing on the stage. He didn't care about the food and the flowers and all that good stuff happening. All he was focused on was making sure that drop of water did not spill, because he had 2 bodyguards on either side of him at the ready, assigned by the king no less. So it wasn't like anybody was going to stop whatever was going to go down from going down. That's one-pointed concentration, even within the distractions of the world. But that's what happens when the mind is still. It's still and it's focused on the important thing, not the distractions of the outside. So number 3, right? We talked about stilling the body. Then we talked about stilling the mind. The third was becoming the drashta, the observer. So 3, secret of the drashta bhava. The third stage of meditation is cultivating the sakshi bhava, or drashta bhava, the witnessing attitude or the ability of observation. Drashta bhava is the ability to observe oneself and maintain that state of awareness continuously for a long time. Drashta bhava is the ability to observe oneself and maintain that state of awareness continuously for a long time. It is the state where you are able to say, I am observing myself. I am observing my behavior. I am the witness of my karmas. I am the witness of my thoughts. I am the witness of my ambitions. I am the witness of every experience of mine. Again, the mind has to be trained to observe itself. There's a trick here. When you think, I want to become quiet, who is the one doing the thinking? It is the mind that is thinking. It is the same mind which is agitated and which desires peace and quietness. It seems to be a paradox that the nature of the mind is to be active and move all the time, but the desire of the mind is to be still. The nature of the mind is to continuously flow, but the desire of the mind is to be still. If you take a look at what he said there about the nature of the mind being continuously to flow, That would explain why the air element is associated with the mental plane or thought. The air element, which is an element that expresses itself as being continuously in motion, as opposed to the other elements, which are very limited and conditioned in their motion. The air element is closest to the akasha, which is completely unbound. The air element isn't bound by form, but it is bound to be constantly in force. Vayu. So with these stories, there's also deep metaphors. It isn't just simply taken at surface level face value. Him having to focus on that vessel on his head. Where's the third eye located? We talk about one-pointed concentration for an extended period of time. You don't want to spill a drop of water because you want to stay focused on one point. Poison ivy, poison ivy. You have to pick up on the desire of the mind, not the nature of the mind. So the nature of the mind is movement, constant movement. That's the mind in its natural state. Everybody's got a scattered brain because the mind is represented by the air element, which is in constant movement. That's the nature of mind. But the desire of the mind is to be still, to be at peace, to be free, to be liberated from its nature. You have to pick up on the desire of the mind, not the nature of the mind. That is the secret. If you identify with the mental movement, you will follow the trains of thought wherever they take you. If you guys are in my class or listen to the live stream, you'll know that when I reached this recent higher level of meditation in my practice, it's not that things got easier. Things actually got a bit more difficult. Because as I've been able to go deeper within myself, I'm able to see clearly now more and more memories, more and more experiences from my own mind. Memories that I completely forgotten about. I'm able to tap into them. But the thing is, the mind wants to jump and stick to those memories and relive them or run away from them. That's what the mind wants to do, to constantly move. But the secret to maintaining through that state is non-attachment. Non-attachment. Because when you attach to it, you identify with it, and that takes you out of meditation. Now you're just reliving memories instead of being the observer. The observer doesn't make a judgment. The observer simply observes and witnesses. That's what the drashta bhava is about. So instead of attaching to those memories and following the train of thought wherever they take me, instead of doing that, I stay focused. He says, if you identify with the idea of peace, hold yourself back and remain connected to that idea. You can observe the movement of the mind by being at one place. That is the drashta bhava or sakshi bhava. When you become the sakshi, the observer of yourself, and that faculty of observation is continuous, constant, and does not dissipate or fluctuate, then you become centered. Your mind becomes centered, and there is an experience of peace and harmony. Developing the sakshi bhava is the entry ticket to Jnana Yoga. You begin with Jnana and attain Jnana. The sakshi bhava is the third stage of Jnana and the first stage of Jnana Yoga. With the help of the witnessing attitude, gradually you learn to make good use of the Viveka budhi, the discriminating faculty of the intellect, and vairagya budhi, the non-attaching faculty of the intellect. These are the two weapons of the intellect, just as you have 2 feet. If you need to go anywhere, your 2 feet will take you the distance. In the same way, if the intellect has to travel somewhere, its 2 feet or wings are Viveka and vairagya. Bodhi walks or grows with the help of these two. When Viveka and vairagya accompany Bodhi, then you develop the intensity to be free of the Vishyakara vritti and unite with the Brahmi vritti. These are key thoughts to assist you in becoming better at meditation. Okay? He says, when you become the Sakshi, the observer of yourself, and that faculty of observation is continuous, constant, and does not dissipate or fluctuate, then you become centered. When do you become centered? When you become the observer of yourself, and that observation is continuous and it doesn't dissipate or fluctuate. So that's what I meant when some of these visions come to mind. I'm not chasing them and going off on another train of thought, down another rabbit hole. You got to stay focused. Now, lately, I've been using the Omkar, the Om symbol, as my symbol of focus. So I've been working with Durga, and I've been doing Tattva Shuddhi, Chakra Shuddhi, etc. But I keep my focus on the Om symbol the whole time. So when the visions do start to come up, and I realize that, I stay focused on the Om symbol to keep me grounded so I can complete the meditation while staying focused on the meditation. Because it's very easy to get distracted and sidetracked. And before you realize it, it's like, oh shit, I got distracted. Then you have to bring yourself back. I found it helpful for me to focus on the Om symbol the entire time. Maybe that can help you. Rich Nigga says, so since you gotten deeper, you probably was in the meditation an hour plus, right? No, actually, even as he said in this book and as he's said on live videos, you don't need to meditate for hours and hours and hours at a time. 20 minutes is sufficient. 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, that's sufficient. When I was first really getting into this stuff, I was flexing and pushing myself, right? 3 hours, right? 3, 4, 5 hours. While that can be helpful and it's kind of cool, it isn't necessary. So these recent meditations I've been doing with Om and Durga and Tattva Shuddhi on a daily basis, they haven't, I don't time it, but I mean, it's no more than 30 minutes. But within those 30 minutes, I'm completely focused deeply on my center of focus. Vincent El Cristo says, try not talking for a day or more and observe what's going on in the mind. You may get a headache and realize other people ain't crazy. Yeah. So developing Sakshi Bhava is the entry ticket to Gyan Yoga. You begin with Jnana to attempt Gyan. So it starts here. You have to become proficient at getting to this point. Stilling the body, stilling the mind, then becoming the observer of what's happening in the mind. And he says in doing so, this is the good part of this. This is the good part of this. None of this are for no reason. None of this is just because some Swami dude said so. This is all part of a process. This is all part of a system. When you become the observer, after stilling the mind, after stilling the body, what happens is now you're able to make decisions from a very balanced perspective. And what's able to happen at that point is you learn to use Viveka and vairagya. You learn to use those two elements. Those become your two legs, your two wings. You learn to discriminate and you learn non-attachment. And as I said before, when you go into the internal world, everything is there. Everything is there. Pleasure and pain exist there. Deep realizations exist there. Distraction exists there. Everything exists on the inner planes. So if you're exposed to that with an open mind, you're definitely going to get distracted. So you develop discrimination and non-attachment to cut through the nonsense and to stay focused on the goal. Without that, you will get lost in the astral plane. You will get lost in the etheric plane. You will get lost in the mental plane. Matter of fact, you won't even make it to the mental plane. So we're reading yoga books and Kabbalah books in conjunction because, as I have said already, if you were listening, Kabbalah is the map Yoga is the vehicle. The two wings of your chariot are Viveka and Vairagya. The two wings of your plane, of your vehicle, is discrimination and non-attachment. If you don't have those equipped to your Merkaba, you are not traveling on this map. I'm telling you, that's not my rule. That's just how this system flows. This is how the universe works, how the cosmos works. So don't just meditate and sit still just because that's the rules, that's what the swamis do. No, it's because it helps you to clarify this equipment. And when you and see people ask questions, well, how do I know it's true? Just because some yogi said that, You know what I'm saying? You're still on the surface level. You're not getting what I'm talking about here, what he's talking about. It doesn't matter who said it. Did you test it out and see if it's true? Did you test it in your own laboratory? Because if you tested it for yourself, you wouldn't have to ask me that question. Doesn't matter who said it. Nicolas Cage could have said it. If it works, it works. How can I trust and believe it just because the Swami said it? And go back to watching Young Pharaoh, man, because this ain't the channel for you. But I get it, ask questions, you know what I'm saying? Get the truth for yourself, yes. But some of these questions you can answer for yourself when you try it out. Let's continue. When the drashta bhava, did I skip a piece? Yeah, I might have skipped a piece. These are the two weapons of the intellect, just as you have 2 feet. If you need to go anywhere, your 2 feet will take you the distance. In the same way, if the intellect has to travel somewhere, its 2 feet or 2 wings are Viveka and Vairagya. Bodhi walks or grows with the help of these two. When Viveka and Vairagya accompany Bodhi, then you develop the intensity to be free of the Vishakara vritti and unite with the Brahmi vritti. When the drashta bhava comes into your life, Viveka and Vairagya become its base pillars. Non-attachment and discrimination becomes the base pillars of being the observer. This allows you to remain free from the influences of the world. You act and perform in the world. You do not become divorced from the world, but you remain free from the results and bondage of karmas. You undertake karma, but remain free. After practicing the Sakshi Bhava for a sustained period, you become established in this attitude. So, step 1, you still the body. Step 2, you still the mind. Step 3, you become the observer, right? That's what we just talked about. Now, step 4, stepping into the realm of Gyan. Gyan allows you to explore your nature. It allows you to manage and guide the behavior of the mind, budhi, and sentiments. After this gross nature has become balanced through the first 3 stages of meditation, then, in the 4th stage, Gyan Yoga begins. Now the meditation becomes contemplative. So the meditation becomes contemplative after you go through the process of stilling the mind and stilling the body, and becoming the witness or the observer of what's happening in the mind. And in that process of observation, you develop discrimination and non-attachment. After that has been established, now we talk about contemplative transcendental meditation. Sadhana of duality. What should you contemplate on? The Vedas have defined 4 statements which a sadhak should contemplate on. Right? So now that we've gotten to this point, now we're going to talk about the mahavakyas. Those are the 4 statements. Peace, Alchemy Gold. So, once we've reached this point, let's see what the 4 mahavakyas have to do with all this. What should you contemplate on? The Vedas have defined 4 statements which a sadhak should contemplate on. An idea is inherent in all these statements. In each of them, You are seeing yourself as an individual and Brahman as another reality which you are trying to attain. All the statements constitute the individual and the aim or objective. Aham is me, the individual, right? Aham means me, the individual. Aham Brahma Asmi. That means I am that reality. Thus, I am is the individual self, and the awareness of that reality connects you with it. You are aware of you as an individual self and of the higher reality or experience which you are trying to gain. You are aware of you as an individual self and of the higher reality which you are trying to attain. So you're aware of both at the same time. I am that reality. This is important, right? These four mahavakyas, because these are statements that you can't think about until you've stilled the body and the mind. If you try to think of this with an active ego, the mind going all over the place, the body going all over the place, what are you going to think? If you were to say, I am God, I am that reality, I am ultimate consciousness, then you're identifying ultimate consciousness with the distracted and dissipated, scattered mind. That is not what this is about. You've got to still that aspect of yourself first. You've got to still your thoughts and your body first. You don't just say, I am God, because you're going to identify the I am with the scattered aspect of yourself. Worried about Will Smith and Chris Rock still. Worried about what the president's doing, and worried about the weather and all that other stuff. So you become aware of you as an individual self and of the higher reality or experience which you're trying to attain. There is always this separation in Gyan Yoga. Although it is stated that the experience of duality ceases in Gyan Yoga, the duality has to be maintained in the process of perfecting the sadhana of Gyan Yoga. In the practice, you have to maintain duality, awareness of yourself as an individual unit, and of the goal that you're trying to achieve, Brahman. Right, so we're trying to become aware of the destination and where you currently are. Because if you have a map and you got the destination, you're still not able to get there unless you know where you're at. So he's saying here, you want to maintain the awareness of your current position. Only when the duality is there that you will have the motivation and inspiration to attain something which is far from you. Therefore, all the statements indicate this separation. Prajnam Brahman, which means consciousness and Brahman. Aham Brahma Asmi, I and Brahman. Ayam Atma Brahma, this soul and Brahman. Tat Tvam Asi, you and Brahman. So those are the four mahavakyas. And he's stating here that each of those four mahavakyas are illustrating a duality. And not simply pointing out the duality, but pointing out the current position and the destination, where you are and where you're trying to go. So the first one is consciousness and Brahman. You want to identify consciousness and Brahman. The second is I and Brahman. The third is soul and Brahman. The fourth is you and Brahman. So that's the totality of our individual experience and Brahman. The and between those phrases is the glue, the synthesizing element that you're supposed to begin to contemplate on. Contemplate the soul and Brahman. Contemplate you and Brahman. Contemplate me and Brahman. Contemplate consciousness and Brahman. There's a connection there that must be meditated on, but it can only be seen once the mind and body are still. As simple as this may seem, this is actually very advanced because the basic mind doesn't have the capacity to do this, not efficiently. Because again, like we said before, you get that false prophet syndrome. If the lower mind meditates on I am God, we know what's going to happen. Yeah, they're on social media making all these grand posts and all these pictures wearing this giant ankh, all this other stuff. And I've come to save the people. I've come to save the people, right? I am Jesus reincarnated. That's the product of contemplating these deep concepts without first purifying the self. And purifying the self involves non-attachment of the body, non-attachment of the mind. So, in all the mahavakyas of the Vedas, there's a distinction between me and Brahman. This indicates that you have to make an effort to attain that awareness and realization. You gotta make an effort. You don't just buy an ankh and that's it. You make an effort. 711 says all the garb and are garbage with the ego. Exactly. All the garb and the garbage. Gots to make the effort. Welcome, happy reviews. Peace, peace. So the first mahavakya, a first point of contemplation. The first statement or idea is that of consciousness is the transcend. The first statement or idea is that consciousness is the transcendental reality. Prajnanam Brahman. Consciousness is Brahman. The supreme self or the supreme consciousness. Brahman. Brahman is the supreme self, the supreme consciousness. Brahman is the all, right? Brahman is the highest conception of God that we can conceive of. Brahman is not a person somewhere with feelings. Brahman is the title of the totality of existence. All of it. There is nothing beyond Brahman. There is nothing beyond Brahman. You can call it something else if you want to. It's not about the name of a person. We're talking about a state of existence. The most high, as in there's nothing past this point. This is the totality of all existence, okay? So it says here, consciousness is Brahman, the supreme self or the supreme consciousness. When the thought consciousness is the supreme self is held in the mind, right? Consciousness is that supreme self. When that's held in the mind, how do you understand the relationship of that consciousness with your consciousness, right? How do you understand the relationship of that supreme, most high, ultimate consciousness with your individual consciousness? How do you do that? The consciousness which is in you is different from the transcendental and supreme consciousness. Therefore, why has it been said that consciousness is the supreme self? What is the reason? This is how the contemplation and inquiry begins. When the elements of awareness and knowledge become one, then there is experience of prajna. Everyone has the faculty of awareness, chetana, and a certain degree of knowledge, gyan, but normally the two don't unite. Right? So everyone has awareness and everyone has knowledge, but those two do not unite in most people. I know better, but I still did it anyway. I don't know why I did it. I knew I shouldn't have done it, right? There's awareness and there's knowledge. Everyone has access to it, but everyone doesn't unify those things. When the two are united, then one attains prajna. Therefore, check this out. Therefore, the state of prajna, the state of inner awareness, inner knowledge, in which one is the witness of every experience, is acquired through the union of the elements of knowledge and awareness. The union of awareness and knowledge. Many times the answer to inquiry comes not from thinking, but from reading and listening. Not from thinking, but from reading and listening. If you had the ability to think in a manner that allowed you to reach into the essence of an idea, then Gyan Yoga would not be necessary, as your thinking process would follow a different course altogether. It is because you do not have the ability to think in such a manner that Gyan Yoga speaks of the concepts of consciousness and Brahman. You do not have the ability, as you are thinking in different directions all the time, because the nature of mind is to be scattered like the air. You have never thought in terms of the transcendental self. Therefore, Seek the answer to all inquiries in relation to the Supreme Consciousness and yourself from listening and reading, and not from your own mind. This is why we read, to gain information, right? See, a lot of people say things like, I don't need to read. I just go within. I pull it out from within. But that within that they're talking about is that funky, limited ego. Not from a deep state. Not from a deep state. See, I've shown the diagram here that goes all the way through the inner self, from the external self to the inner self. That's going within. And yes, very much that's where the answers are. That's where these same people got this information from. But the thing is, without a process of actually going within, these people that say that are not doing it. They're just going into what limited information they already have in their head. What limited information they already have in their head. That's why you go to college. You don't go to college to get smart. You go to college to understand more information about the subject and hopefully making a connection between that information. That implies understanding and wisdom. When you take the information and you understand it at a deep level to where you don't have to read anymore, because now you see where the authors were getting their information from, right? So it's not about being a slave to books. I don't need to read. I pulled it from within. Yeah, you're pulling it from your ego and your limited memory. But when you study and you listen to lectures, you have not only more information, but now you're starting to see the connections and the dots that other people have made who understand this information, right? So this author, not only did he study this info, but he's made connections. He's connected dots. He understands it at a synthesized level that goes even beyond the words. It's not about memorizing. It's about understanding it, right? I guarantee that there's some things that you could even teach people who speak a different language because you understand it properly, right? For some, you could probably describe what it's like to walk or to drink or to have sex to someone who speaks a different language because you understand it. You don't have to relate them to a book because the understanding is there. But in order to get to that point, you have to go through the data to make the synthesis in the first place. If I were to go within and pull information from my soul, I'm going to pull out a different quality of information than somebody who's just like, oh, I don't need to read. I just go within. But you got to ask, what are you pulling from? What are you pulling from? I'm not saying it cannot be done. I'm saying that the quality of information that you pull is going to depend on how well you actually understand what it is that you're doing. Even in society, like, you're very limited on what you can do in life, in the world, based on your level of education. That's why people who go to school and get degrees, it's typically believed that they have better opportunities because they've applied their study. If nothing else, you can kind of just at least say, okay, well, I can see at least this person spent 4, 5, 6 years immersed in the data. I know that at least. I don't know if they understand it or not until they demonstrate it, but at least I know they've been immersed in the data. This isn't something that they just walked into. It doesn't work any differently when it comes to spiritual information. Let's continue. Therefore, seek the answers to all inquiries in relation to the Supreme Consciousness and yourself from listening and reading, and not from your own mind. Listening is satsang. And that's a word that you've probably seen in the beginning of these books. Right, at the very beginning of these books, you'll see right here, discourses from the Yoga Drishti series of satsangs at Ganga Darshan. That's at the beginning of these books because these books were actually lectures. These were actually lectures that he was given to groups of people that they just put in books. So it says, listening is satsang, reading is swadhyaya. The purpose of satsang and swadhyaya, listening and reading, is to induce certain thoughts in the mind, to introduce certain concepts in the mind, which allow one to know the difference between the normal responses of consciousness in the material dimension and the potential inherent in consciousness, so that one is uplifted in the spiritual dimension. This is where the first sadhana of Jnana Yoga takes place, knowing the difference between the behavior of the normal consciousness and the transcendental consciousness. Knowing the difference between the behavior of the normal consciousness and the transcendental consciousness. The responses in each are different. In the state of transcendence, the quality of the mind and consciousness is sattvic, pure, untainted, uninfluenced, harmonious, and balanced. Right? In the normal state, the consciousness is guided by tamoguna and rajoguna. This is an indication and guideline. In normal life, the consciousness is guided by tamoguna and rajoguna, while in spiritual life, the consciousness is guided by sattvaguna. This is the starting point for knowing the difference between the normal behavior and the special behavior of the mind, which leads to the realization that consciousness is the catalyst for changing itself. There is sublimation of thoughts, sentiments, ideas, and efforts. Slowly and gradually, you are able to sublimate the normal behavior into a transcendental sattvic behavior. That is the attainment and realization of the first contemplative thought of the Vedas, Prajnanam Brahman. Relate the state of your mind with the statement Prajnanam Brahman. If prajna is equated with the Supreme Self, then there is no suffering in it. Now observe yourself. You are experiencing pain. Who is the one experiencing the pain? If you are a part of that Supreme Spirit, then the power of sattva exists in your life. That character exists in you. Use it. When you begin to use sattva, then the thought that you are experiencing pain will reduce in intensity. You can separate yourself from the intimate connection that you had with the pain, due to which you experienced it. This is how the drashta bhava becomes useful. That is why the drashta bhava is the third stage of dhyana and the first step into Jnana Yoga. When you observe the state of your mind and intellect and try to bring them into a state of equipoise by becoming free of the Vishyakara vritti and uniting with the Brahmi vritti, it is necessary to know the difference between prajna, which is an awakened state of life, and nescience, which is a dark state of life. There is karma taking place in both states. But when it takes place in darkness and nescience, you become bound to it. There's a key right there. Karma is happening either way. But when it's taking place in ignorance, you become bound to that karma. When the karma takes place in light, you are free of it. You are its witness. Yes, it's possible to exist in the world and witness the karma that the body is going through, but understanding that it is not yours. You are not bound to it. You are free of its results. This is the state of Prajnanam Brahman. Awareness and knowledge become one. The second mahavakya, realization of inherent sattva. By the way, these 4 mahavakyas are what you take into meditation. So after you've stilled the body, you stilled the mind, you become the witness and the observer of the mind. Then you start contemplating these 4 mahavakyas. So all these 4 sections that we're reading right now, the first, second, third, and fourth, please, if you have this book, go back and read them and meditate on them. That's what you're supposed to be taking into deep meditation. Shortcut to enlightenment, if there was one. Why? Because you're directly meditating on the supreme consciousness. The supreme consciousness. You're not taking it step by step by step. You're going straight to the juice. You're going straight to the juice. Thank you, Society Ejects. The definition of nescience: lack of knowledge or awareness, ignorance. Alora says, that's what I needed to hear. Me too. Okay, so the second Mahavakya, realization of inherent sattva. Sattva is inherent, right? Everyone and everything has a degree of sattva, but for the most part, tamas and rajas are so expressed that we can barely see the sattvic element within us. So the second Mahavakya, when you're able to identify your sattvic nature and distance yourself from tamasic and rajasic behaviors, the sattvic nature becomes increasingly stronger in your life. When you're able to identify with the sattvic nature, when you're able to reduce the tamasic and rajasic behaviors. So I found that was going on with me in my practice before I even realized it. Working with all these demons and spirits, etc., etc. After I got over the petty stuff, after I got over the selfish stuff, I noticed that I began to reduce the rajasic elements. I used to reduce the desires and running to and fro and trying to get this and trying to make that. I began to reduce that. I began to reduce my tamasic qualities. I began to reduce my depression. I began to reduce behavior that was self-limiting and destructive. I began to reduce those. And naturally, as I reduced those behaviors, the sattvic element of myself began to increase gradually over time. I mean, hell, if you've watched me for these years, or you can go back through my old videos, you can even see that. You can see that in the content that I speak of, in my physical body, in the type of books that I began studying. I began to reduce the tamasic and rajasic and increase the sattvic. So it's there within all of us. And this spiritual practice is a process of reducing the negative and distracting elements and increasing the divine element of yourself. Everyone has it in them, but it's about the percentage and the quantity and the quality. In sattva, there is no spot or taint. There is only purity. As the force of sattva becomes stronger, you realize that you are the sattvic nature. You say, I am that sattva nature. I am the transcendental nature. The statement which one has to contemplate on here is, Aham Brahmasmi. I am that nature. It takes time, but over a period with that identification intensifying, you become the epitome and example of sattva. The day you become an example of the sattvic nature, you become Brahman. You become that. You say, I've become that. That is the second contemplative meditation of the Vedas. I am that supreme self. Aham Brahmasmi. I have become that. That's pretty much what I just mentioned. You become what you believe. You become what you believe. There's no other way. You become what you believe. All right, guys, give me just a quick break. I will be right back in like 60 seconds, at the most 90 seconds. All right, don't go anywhere. I'm literally coming right back. Come on, puppy. Okay. Come on, puppy. on and on and on and on. All right, all right. Alchemy Gold, I'm sorry to hear about that. I know that's been a big thing that's been going around lately for different reasons. And yeah, that's where the real challenge is seen, practicing non-attachment. Because boy, it's hard to not be attached to stuff like that, especially when you need it. My roommate recently went through that same situation. It was $4,000 though. And boy, that was quite a lesson to have to go through, for real. Because it's like, you can't think of why such a thing would happen to you. It's very hard to see the spiritual aspect of having something like that go down. But please understand that as you being someone who's into this work, nothing is ever lost or taken from you. Things are exchanged and they transform, but nothing is ever lost. And that's part of what it means to be Brahman, as we were talking about here. Brahman is the equation, which means that if you see something shift, if you see something disappear or appear, that means something from another aspect has been shifted as well. Just like they talk about quantum entanglement, where one particle goes, its corresponding particle moves as well. So likewise, if you lose something, that only means that you're about to gain something of equal or greater value, of equal or greater quality, not quantity, but quality. So value, of equal or lesser value. Focus more on that. Focus more on what's coming than what was lost. As a matter of fact, focus on the stillness of right now, knowing that everything works out every single time. Yeah, just like you said, the universe will repay you in tenfolds. But keep your mind balanced. That's part of allowing this manifestation to take place, is keeping your mind non-attached and balanced. Don't focus on the pain or the negative aspect. Society Eject says, I'm going through that right now with someone that's very close to me, and I was trying to understand why they would do that. Yeah, it's difficult, but like this is why we're doing this. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're doing this to practice, to understand these concepts, and we get this understanding, but then life gets real, and that's the moment where we truly put to test what it is we've been studying, right? Because I can see people, for example, say they might be studying this stuff or with us on the live streams, but then life happens and all the stuff we studied goes out the window, right? Now all the stuff we studied gone out the window and you go back to your old self. That's an indication that the information didn't really penetrate into the deeper levels. But then again, I could see somebody who studied this information and have life happen and understand, you know what? I can see the bigger picture. Although this hurts me on a small scale, on a larger scale, this is part of an equation. This is not the end. This is only the middle of something that is still in progress. It's not over. There's just another half of this equation that I don't quite see yet. So there's nothing that happens in this world that's the end. I don't care if it's physical pain, if it's the loss of someone or loss of something. It's not the end. It's not the end. I have lost plenty of things, and I've also gained plenty of things. And in the middle, I still stand. So it's not like I'm just talking from some distance, like, oh, everything's gonna be okay. Don't focus on the money. Like, no, this shit's happened to me too. And I learned at the end of the day, just like you said, Alchemy Gold, that person obviously needed it more than I did. They needed it more than you did. That doesn't mean it's okay. We're not justifying it, but we're seeing it from a larger picture. And I also understand that everything that I've ever lost, I've always gotten it back in some form. The same form or a better form. Everything I've ever lost, I always got it back. So focus on that. Focus on the fact that the universe is balance. Not balance as I see it, but balance as it sees it. And as long as you are behaving and living in alignment with the universe, then the balance that comes is the same balance that you desire. We Grow Natural says focus on the come up. Society Eject says, but I realize it's just making room for the new. Exactly. William Trent says, dead ass, that's why I'm still here. Yes, sir. Ross says, Trav, I have a deep question. Do you have any information on the field of reeds? Speak. I'm unfamiliar with that reference. Maybe I might know it as a different thing, but as far as what you just said there, I don't know what that is. Ooh, Alka Gold says, facts. I've changed. 5 years ago, they would have been in a spicy pot right now. Right. You see what I'm saying? So celebrate that. Celebrate the fact that you're not reacting the same way that you used to. Celebrate the fact that you're more mature now. Celebrate the fact that you've overcome this test already. IDKDKDF says, weed man took my $10, shake my head. The next week came up on $800 plus. Exactly. Like y'all know, like I don't have to beat a dead horse. Y'all already know. We're dealing with something that is more real than everyday life situations. So everyday life situations as they happen, we're only experiencing an outer part of an inner process. So we never take anything at face value because we have seen the deeper aspect of reality. Happy Review says, one door closes, another door opens. We Grow Natural says, that's hard for me to do because my veil has been lifted. I see too much, and it's funny because it's been around me all this time. My mind is very mature now. My experiences brought me here. Yes, ma'am. Love, peace and greetings. Alora says, yeah, if anything, it's just an opportunity for applying higher knowledge. Yes. Ross says, like at the end of the film Gladiator. Yeah, reminds me a lot of the etheric plane. Society Ejects posted Romans 8:38 through 39. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God. Precisely. Nura says, also don't expect to be repaid anything necessarily. It's likely you have more abundance than that thief. All physical gold is false light. Give thanks to your real light, can't be stolen. Greetings, Nuru, and thank you for that. Yeah, and that's the other part of it, right? Because we're talking about non-attachment and balance in our understanding, which means we're not running from pain, we're not running towards pleasure. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to, doesn't mean you're going to be compensated in the exact same way. It's about balance. Balance is the key. But he said, all physical gold is false light. Give thanks that your real light cannot be stolen. Love says, I've been listening in the background and it's beautiful to hear the support that we all offer to one another. It's touching. This is mystic interdependence. This is love. It's the way it should be. We're all in this together. I mean, we're in this together on our own, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to help each other in any way possible. So, we talked about the first Mahavakya, talked about the second Mahavakya, now we're getting to the third Mahavakya. Remember what he said about the duality and all of these phrases and all of these quotes to be contemplated on. We're seeing the duality as a unity. So we're looking at consciousness and Brahman, I and Brahman, you and Brahman, right? I am that nature. We're contemplating on those two opposites, but understanding that there is a union between those two opposites. So oftentimes, even like with the tree of life, in order to understand the unity of that whole tree, we understand its individual parts. So We're understanding the individual parts in order to understand how they all work together. But see, this is more simple because we're only identifying two aspects. One of them you know very well, which is yourself. The other is the supreme self, which is impossible to know in its totality. But if you're able to bridge the gap between individual and macrocosm, things will start to make sense through correspondence, the law of correspondence. There's a chapter in the book of the Kabbalion that mentions the way that we're able to know things that we cannot know is through correspondence. The same way that scientists utilize technology to understand the world that is beyond our terrestrial realm, they use correspondence. We're not able to actually fly up there and see it with our eyes and touch it with our hands, but we utilize computers that employ algorithms that allow us to use correspondence to get an idea of what it's like out there. Space, the final frontier. Inner space, really. Okay. So, the third Mahavakya, seeing the world anew. When sattva is established and you become that higher reality, aham brahmasmi, I am that Brahman, you begin to observe the world around you and see it differently. There is a story. Once an aspirant came to a sadhu and said, "My intention in life is to attain God realization. Please guide me on this path." The sadhu replied, "It is too difficult and long a process. Instead, do something simpler that can help to improve your life condition. Don't try to search for God." The aspirant insisted, "No, you are a siddha guru, a capable guru. You should be able to help me attain God realization." Ultimately, the guru gave up trying to convince the person and said, "All right, I will give you a mantra. Repeat that. When you begin to experience the power and quality of that mantra in your mind, you will know that you have attained realization." The mantra that the guru gave was, "Aham Brahmasmi." The disciple sat down and began to chant, "Aham Brahma Asmi, Aham Brahma Asmi, Aham Brahma Asmi." He went on repeating the mantra for days and a whole week. He became so engrossed and immersed himself in the chanting of the mantra that he actually identified with the mantra. He identified with it so much that he actually became an embodied Brahman. Brahman with a body, senses, and mind. Another disciple noticed this change and reported to the master, "I believe your new disciple is well on the path of realization." The master said, "All right, let us test him." The master called the aspirant and said, "Tell me about your experiences." The aspirant said, "I see divinity all around me. My mind has been transformed. I have become the supreme self, and I see the whole world with the eyes of the supreme self. Everything looks beautiful to me as an extension of the supreme nature, the transcendental, godly nature." The guru said, "Look at the tree and tell me what you see." The aspirant looked and said, "All I see is luminosity of the divine in every leaf, branch, and twig." Sounds like somebody I've talked to on Instagram. The guru said, "Look at the animals on the road and tell me what you see." The aspirant said, "I see the divinity in the pig, the dog, and the cow. I see the divinity in all animals." The guru said, "Wonderful. You are on your way to becoming self-realized. Do the ashram a favor. Go to the market and bring some vegetables." The young aspirant, fired by the inspiration of Brahman, took some money and a bag and set off. When he reached the market, he saw that there was chaos all around. All the shutters were being pulled down and the people were running here and there in fright. He wondered what was going on and stopped a passerby and asked, "Why is everybody running away from the market? Why are the shops being shut down?" Uh-oh. Uh-oh. The person said, "An elephant has become crazy and is trampling everyone and everything on its path. People are running to save their lives. You should also run away from here." The aspirant thought, all realized beings have a special energy, a special power within them. Buddha was able to quiet a mad elephant with his spiritual power. I also have attained the same realization as Buddha. I can tame that wild elephant. He continued to walk and finally came face to face with the elephant that was creating havoc in the market. He tried to send him peaceful vibes. Become quiet, become passive, sit down, be happy, be contented. However, the elephant was neither a sadhak or a disciple, and it had not received any mantra from anybody. It only saw a two-legged creature standing in front of him, making strange gestures with its hands. That drove the elephant even madder. It wrapped its trunk around the person, lifted him up in the air, and dashed him to the ground. Ugh. Somehow he managed to evade the trampling feet of the elephant and crawled back to the ashram on all fours with every bone broken. Jesus Christ. You see what that love and light will get you, folks? Noticing his pitiful condition, because how could you not notice that? The guru asked, "What happened?" The aspirant, nervous, angry, and dejected with his market experience, blurted out everything to his guru. The guru said, "You made a mistake." The disciple asked, "How?" The guru said, "If you were able to see the higher nature in everyone, every life form, including the elephant, then where was your awareness when the man warned you not to go to that elephant? After all, he was also God. You disobeyed God, and this is the result." Yikes. Thank you, Aldiki. I appreciate you. Ross says, "I don't think people smoking crack is divine." It actually is, on a level. Yikes. Yikes. Boom. He caught the elephant fade, says Straight Panther 79. Alora says, "Oh my God, this is a true story that happened in the ashram. I remember hearing the lecture." Straight Panther 79 says, "That was payback for Dumbo, LOL." Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like, you got to stay balanced. You got to, has changed. Like, understand where you are as well. Kind of like that dude who was a Christian missionary and got on that boat and said he's going to Sentinel Island to convert those people to Christianity. Nobody goes to Sentinel Island because they're going to fill your body with spears before you even make contact with the dirt. And that's exactly what happened to him. He was going to spread the love of Christ to Sentinel Island. There's only like one picture of Sentinel Island. You know what that picture is? It's the beach with all those dudes waving their spears in the air in anger. Like, don't bring your ass on this island because you're not gonna leave alive. That's like the only picture we have of Sentinel Island. So this dude tried to go out there on his own, saying, "Oh, God will protect me. I'm gonna convert them to Christianity," and he didn't even make it on his little boat. Not a story of fear. That's a story of discernment. And I'm sure he was told not to go. Just like this dude was told not to go face that elephant. The point of the story is that after attaining the realization, "I am that," you look at the world around you and see the same reality differently. If you can experience God in yourself, you will be able to see God everywhere else. In a leaf, a stone, insect, animal, a human being, a reptile, and a bird. The mind, the vision, the knowledge and perception will change, and this change will make you see the world from that perspective. If you wear black glasses, the world is seen as black. If you wear red glasses, the world is seen as red. Thomas and Rajas, by the way. If you wear material glasses, the world is seen as material. If you wear transcendental glasses, the world is seen as transcendental. Aham Brahmasmi, the realization that I am that, is like putting on transcendental glasses. You begin to see everything as Brahman. You say, that is also Brahman. This is also Brahman. Everything becomes that. This is the third realization. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. The whole world is seen as an emanation of that cosmic power. It is not only your realization, but even the world changes with your realization. Did you catch that? Let me read it again. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. The whole world is seen as an emanation of that cosmic power. It is not only your realization, but even the world changes with your realization. You dig it? Imagine a student who is studying medicine for an MBBS degree. 2 years pass, 3 years pass, 4 years pass. He is engaged in his studies, trying to understand each and everything. He is trying to understand the science of the body. He is enhancing his knowledge in the area. He is trying to observe, to know, and understand every nerve and fiber of the human body, every organ and muscle. He is trying to understand their use, how to operate them, how to treat them, and how to cure them. He observes the blueprint of the whole body. Yet, he is not a doctor. Even though he has the knowledge of the body, he is not called a doctor. He's a student. Even when he receives a degree, he has not really become a doctor. He's only a doctor only on paper. A student becomes a doctor when he treats his first patient. Having realized the knowledge, he brings it into use. This is true of Prajnanam Brahman as well. When you think that the consciousness is pervaded by Brahma, it is not limited to you. You perceive the truth of the statement with respect to everyone. You are its blueprint, and then you apply it to everyone else, because the same consciousness that is in you exists in everyone else. This is how the realization of this mahavakya leads to the second mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi, and then the third mahavakya, Tat Tvam Asi. You attain the Adveshta Bhava, the experience of non-duality. Jack Parsons called it the oath of the abyss. Look at that golden unicorn horn. Thus, in the process of Gyan Yoga, the experience of Dvaita, duality, is finished, and Advaita, non-duality, is realized. I'ma leave the door open, girl. I'ma leave the door open. I'ma leave the door open. Peace, MC Maestro. MC Maestro says either everything is special or nothing is special, including you. Make a choice and stick to it. Make a choice and stick to it. Alchemy Gold says we all have the same consciousness, question mark. A good way to think of it, this is a very basic way, but just get the concept. There's 8 legs of an octopus, but they all connect at the head. So we can say that that head is consciousness, and each one of those legs is an incarnation of an individual. Yeah, each one of us is aware of our slice of consciousness, but ultimately there is a much deeper, all-pervading consciousness, and that is what God is. And it's not separate from anyone or anything. There's no separation. There's limited awareness, so we're only aware of our personal slice of the pie. But in truth, if we turn that awareness inward, we begin to see that there is a deeper connection all the way down. I'ma leave the door open, girl. I'ma leave the door open. Thanks, Fortnite, for keeping me hip on today's hits. Sri Krishna gives an indication of this in the Bhagavad Gita. He is asked, verse or 12:1, what kind of a person is dear to you? He replies, I like the Jnani and I like the Bhakta. He is asked next, why the Jnani and the Bhakta? Krishna replies, the Jnani tries to know me through the intellect and accepts me and surrenders to me through the intellect. The Bhakta surrenders himself totally. He does not apply his intellect. He surrenders his whole life. The two have different characters. It is not appropriate to ask who is better, because the character, nature, and behavior of the two are different. Both are dear to me. But remember this, if you have to attain me, you have to be free of the dual experience. When you come near me, the experience of I and you no longer remains. You become one with me, and I become one with you. The Dvaita Bhava turns into Atma Bhava. Ooh, I just learned something. Okay, so what I learned from Ophiel is that there's two paths of studying the occult science. The first path is the Hermetic path. The second path is the Orphic path. Now, I've been coming to learn more about the Orphic path because that's not me. I'm the Hermetic path. That's why I see all these books everywhere, in every room, nothing but scattered books. Because in the Hermetic path, I apply my intellect and I try to find God through intellect. That's the Hermetic path, related to Hermes. The Orphic path is on the opposite side, related to Orpheus. And there's surrender, there's worship, there's intuition. It's very abstract. It's not literal, logical. It's the path of the passionate, the one who is able to tap in and get downloads without reading a book, right? And I talked about that earlier. That doesn't mean it can't happen, but there's still a certain refinement. The Orphic practitioner, like he says here, completely surrenders themselves to the spirit, right? And in that surrender gains a connection. So in that case, it's not about reading books, but it's about completely surrendering the self to the divine. And in that way, a relationship happens. So those are the two paths of studying the occult, the Hermetic path and the Orphic path. But I've learned here just through this paragraph that even the Vedic had a word for it. So he says, what kind of person is dear to you? I like the Jnani and the Bhakta. So one goes through Jnana Yoga, one goes through Bhakti Yoga. Interesting. Nuru says, thus, the world changes, happens for the same reason as that quantum entanglement you spoke of, Trav. It's a frequency adjustment across the ether that touches everything and everyone you have touched. And it's really beautiful when you see it for what it is. It really is. So once again, if your passion is trying to save the people that you love, you're not going to do it by trying to teach them yoga, Kabbalah, and magic. You're going to do it by living your life in the best way possible and clarifying your awareness. Lily Jane says, ooh, that sounds like me. Orphic, that's deep. Oftentimes the book backs up as confirmation. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And just like everything else in life, we're not either this or that. We're a combination of both. Primarily, I'm Hermetic, but I have my Orphic ways as well, right? But what I present to the internet, to you guys, is my Hermetic side. But there is an Orphic path for me as well. I just prefer to talk about stuff that I can back up in a text so that you can get that same text and see it for yourself. some of the Orphic things that I just download from the ethers, I usually don't share that. But it happens. We all have different degrees. I'ma leave the door open, girl. I don't even like Bruno Mars like that. But I'm telling you, if you hear that song over and over again, eventually, it seeps into the subconscious. It's not a bad song. Let us continue. But the important thing here is tat twam asi. Remember this. If you have to attain me, you have to be free of the dual experience. When you come near me, the experience of I and you no longer remains. You become one with me, and I become one with you. The Dvaita Bhava turns into Atma Bhava. Sri Swamiji always says, cultivate Atma Bhava. See yourself in others. Those of you who have heard him or read his satsangs will come across this statement often. It is a very simple way of explaining the state of Jnana Yoga. See yourself in others. That means you are that. Tattvam asi. See yourself in others. See yourself in others. Like I'm telling you, this is such an important thing. My cousin visited me last night, and it was a wonderful visit. But one of the things that we talked about was how I've been practicing gratitude all year long, and it has completely transformed my perspective on life and reality. Right? I've always been grateful, but the quality of my gratitude has improved. And I've been learning now that I need to cultivate humility and humbleness. That's not saying I'm a person who thinks that I'm better than everybody or anything like that, but just like I was a grateful person, my quality of gratitude has deepened. It's expanded. It's become more intimate, more real. It made more sense. So likewise, I'm now going to start doing the same thing with humility, because it's easy when you're studying this information to start thinking of yourself better than other people, right? Now look, I'm not walking around thinking to myself, yeah, I'm better than you, and you over there, you're nothing compared to me. I'm not thinking that. But when you start talking about, like the hive mind and how most people don't understand this information, nor do they want to, nor will they in this lifetime, those things are true, but I cannot base a judgment on value of myself or them based on that, because that's nature. That's just how it happens. I didn't necessarily choose to be who I am today. There's a little bit of the universe and nature applying certain elements to my reality, and a little bit of me making conscious decisions. But it's not all, none of it was my ego's doing. And a big part of that is to see yourself in others. The same people that I mentioned that are locked within the hive mind process or locked within ignorance and foolishness, I was ignorant and foolish too in this incarnation. I've done some stupid things. I've done things that I would not have ever thought of doing today. What changed? How I saw the world, how I saw myself, how I saw God, that changed. So that changed my behavior. But at one point, at some point in this personal history of mine, right? At some point in this childhood level, at some point in this old me level, I was ignorant, I was asleep. So when I see other people, I can relate because I've done some of the same things. Thankfully, I don't have any permanent reminders of my ignorance, thankfully. But I'm not better than anybody. I'm not better than anybody just because I know how to read a bunch of books. Because you know what? As smart and beautiful as I am, there's somebody out there who's smarter than me, who knows more than I do about this subject matter. Hell, it's somebody I know for a fact in this chat that is more well-versed than me in this information. Shout out to Nuru. I'm humbled that you still come to these sessions and listen along. You feel me? So humility and humbleness for me is realizing that I can see myself in others and not making any value judgments based on the information. I just wanted to take that quick detour because it does apply to Tat Twam Asi. Framestar Film says, change your mind and you change your world, but don't forget that others have their own minds and worlds to live in too. So be compassionate where you can to their point of view. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Something I definitely try to stay aware of. Will Trent says, Trav, I cannot lie. I was thinking how humbling this has been. I was on to say, oh, I'm not coming back here after I die, but you helped me realize that's attachment. I'm tied to the pain I've been through. Exactly. Exactly. Good stuff. Let's keep going. Good stuff. I love it. And you know what? To see somebody who might be better at you in what you do, that shouldn't be intimidating. If anything, that should be encouraging. You know what I'm saying? That should be encouraging to see what is capable with somebody who can apply their creativity and their intellect in the same field that you are. It's encouraging for me to see somebody who's doing better than me or doing something that I want to do. There was a time, I said the story before on my streams, when I was making music and stuff, I used to see like Soulja Boy and I get pissed off. Like, my music's better than his. Why is he more popular? Why is he always getting the da-da-da-da? And I never went anywhere because I had a jealous mindset. You know, I would see someone doing better and I'd get mad. I had to switch that, right? My girlfriend at the time showed me, like, instead of getting mad at what he's doing and complaining, why not just realize that what he's doing just means that you can do it too. It just means that it's possible, right? And what I learned from internet marketing is that a lot of times people are afraid to start an online business because other people are doing it. Oh, I can't sell unicorn pens because somebody else is doing it. That's the wrong way to look at it. If you look online and you see that people are buying something, that means that you should sell it. Why? Because there's an audience for it. If someone is successful selling unicorn pens, that means there's a customer base for unicorn pens. Now what do? You go read their reviews and find the complaints and make your unicorn pens better. Don't go Googling my unicorn pens. I can't mix up my my algorithm feeds. Hopefully that can help somebody who's thinking about starting an online business. Don't be discouraged because somebody's doing what you want to do. Study them, learn from them. Do it your way. I love it. Alora says, for real, I was ignorant as hell, lol. Gratitude practice, I think, opens the door for awareness and, in return, learning. Yes, ma'am. Straight Panther says, remember, the adversary is always you in your own form and fashion. Right. Just like in Mortal Kombat, the old one, you know, some of us remember that old Mortal Kombat on Genesis and SNES. When you're fighting on that pillar and going up to fight the enemies, just before you get to the last boss, you have to fight yourself. I know it's just a game, but that was also, symbolic. Alchemy Gold says, same. I enjoy learning from those I aspire to be. Me too. Matter of fact, that's the best way to learn. That's the best way to learn. At this point, I only study those who I want to be like. And those who I don't want to be like. We Grow Natural says, that's what it shows me, that it is possible to achieve it. Yes, ma'am. Nuru says, I see myself in you too, Trav. I'm here because I'm benefiting from your merits and knowledge and the generosity that everyone here in our satsang shows each other. That feeling is rare. Yes, it is. I very much enjoy doing these live streams. Straight Panther says, there ain't no adversary at all. Right. No enemies, man. No enemies. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Atma Bhava means that you are able to project yourself in another person and become that person. Ooh. Atma Bhava. That means you're able to project yourself in another person and become that person. Remember what we saw here in Initiation into Hermetics? There is actually an exercise where you have to visualize projecting yourself into other objects and things, and eventually other people. And we ask, why would you have to do that? But at least it shows you a lesson of seeing that you and others are the same at some level, not on the surface level, but at a deep level. Let's see. Table of contents doesn't exactly tell us where that is. I have to flip through though. Pretty sure it's one of the first steps. But yeah, if you're able to sit through and practice this whole book, I mean, this right here is a path in itself. This right here could be all somebody needs. But don't get it twisted. Even he got his information from the Vedic. Death, Killer, Reaper, peace and greetings. Okay, let's keep going. So you're able to see the other person differently, not as an outsider or a separate entity, but as an extension of yourself. This Atma Bhava of Sri Swamiji is the essence of the mahavakyas of the Vedas. It is the essence of Gyan Yoga. When you come close to the Supreme Self, the Dvaita Bhava always converts into Atma Bhava. Remember, Dvaita is duality, right? Dvaita is duality. And where were we? And the Atma Bhava is oneness, is unity. And just like you said earlier, the Dvaita Bhava turns into Atma Bhava. So the two become one. The union begins to happen. So this is when you come close to the Supreme Self, the Dvaita Bhava, the duality, always converts into Atma Bhava, oneness, unity. Right here it says Atma Bhava means that you are able to project yourself in another person and become that person. Unity with the thing that you're focused on, concentrating on, contemplating. Once Atma Bhava is attained, one lives the experience of Adveshta Sarvabhutanam, loving towards all creatures. Loving towards all creatures. Guess what? That includes spiders. That includes roaches. That includes crackheads. Loving towards all creatures. Weeds. Rats. Centipedes, tarantulas, scorpions. Loving towards all creatures. One does not see any difference anymore and becomes endowed with special qualities which connect that person, that aspirant, with every being of the world. Loving towards all creatures. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and say, oh, love and light and peace, my brethren, and go reach and pick up the Black Widow. No, it doesn't mean that. Because I also have intellect, earthly awareness. I know what a Black Widow is capable of. I'm not going to go out of my way to experience that painful bite. However, I'm also not going to just go and step on it because I'm afraid. When you have a loving towards all creatures, that actually opens up new options. Right before this point, when you see a spider, the first thing you say is must kill, must kill. When you practice loving towards all creatures, you got a few different options now. I'll leave that up to you. There's a snake in my boot. I'm gonna leave the door open, girl. I actually paid for that emote. From anew, atomic, the person becomes vibhu, expansive. Society Eject says, LOL, love and light and peace, and go play with snakes. And we've seen that before, right? Wasn't there a recent pastor, and I say recent within like 30 years or so, 40 years maybe. There was like a pastor or a preacher who was talking about how he had reached Christ consciousness and he was able to play with poisonous snakes. And like he stepped into a pit of poisonous snakes and got bit several times. Several times. Oh my God. And that's not the only case. There's been plenty of cases, you know what I'm saying? Plenty of cases. And it's a stage a lot of us go through. Hopefully you go through that stage before you do something permanently dangerous. I remember my uncle, who's a pastor, was telling me in his early days of preaching, he thought, I reached his Christ consciousness, and he told everyone to come out and watch him walk on water. So he went to the beach and tried to walk on water. It didn't quite happen. But he said that was a humbling lesson for himself, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in this love and light and forget that, there's also rules of the world that we live in. That doesn't invalidate the love and light. That just means, play the game that you're playing. Just because you believe doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to manifest in the exact way that you believe. Matter of fact, the Bible also says, thou shalt not tempt God, right? Just because you can doesn't mean that you need to do it. Now, say for example, if there was a scenario where you had no way out and you were cornered in a pit of serpents like Indiana Jones, then maybe love and light will help you get out of that situation because you'll be fearless. But to put yourself into danger just to prove to someone else, that's not smart. Just like that kid who got on his boat and tried to go out to Sentinel Island, and instead of converting those Sentinelese into Christians, he was converted into a shish kebab. Oh, MC Maestro, I love that scene. Sometimes I just watch it by itself. I love the cognitive dissonance that he experiences. I think the actor did a good job. The fact that he's like, oh, isn't it so cute? I love it. And then proceeds to get his arm fractured in a horrible way. It was so surprising and shocking. I love that scene. MC Maestro says there's a scene in Prometheus where a character comes across an alien and tries to pet it. Safe to say he did not apply Jnana and paid for it. That's one of my favorite scenes of that whole movie. I love the Alien franchise so much. I'm waiting desperately for them to make a good one, according to the original vision. Let's continue. I think those xenomorphs are very pleasant to look at. Beautiful creatures. One becomes interconnected with, from anew, atomic, the person becomes vibhu, expansive. What did Aleister Crowley call this concept? He talked about what was it? It escapes my mind now. The hadith and, wow, I can't believe I forgot this. Somebody here knows Aleister Crowley. The masculine and the feminine aspect, the dot with the wings, and then the all-encompassing woman. What was that? Somebody will type it in. But from the anew atomic, the person becomes vibhu, expansive. One becomes interconnected with each and everyone. The anasadhana, vakya, aham brahmasmi, is realized only when one becomes adveshta, non-differentiated. Then you perceive the whole world filled with divinity. Awareness and knowledge become one, and that is what is expressed all the time. What is the expression of divinity? Not siddhi, but shanti, which means peace. Not psychic powers, but peace. Right? So we said the same thing there twice. What is the expression of divinity? Not siddhi, but shanti. Not psychic powers, but peace. Peace is the experience of divinity. Lord Buddha would remain peaceful under every circumstance. Lord Rama would remain peaceful under every situation. Lord Krishna would remain peaceful under every situation. No one ever saw him become agitated. He was playful, yes, but not restless. The inner state of peace, which it is possible to continuously enhance, has been accepted as the first experience of divinity. When there is peace, there is contentment and fullness. There is no lack. Where there is peace, there is contentment and fullness. There is no lack. So look, while you can and very much probably will attain degrees of psychic ability while practicing these meditations, that's not what this is all about. That's not what this is all about. MC Maestro says siddhis are tools to help you achieve higher states. Right. Framestar Films, thank you. He says knew it. So yeah, hadith and knew it. The atomic and the expansive. Thank you, Lily June. Om Durga. Durga Tishamani. Man, I found out some really cool stuff, you guys. I can't wait to share it. I keep finding all this modern stuff in the Vedic. Like, there's one particular topic that everyone loves to talk about in the occult YouTube world of today, having no idea that even that thing has an origin in the Vedic mythology. Yes, one of our very favorite occult pantheon deities even has an origin in the Vedic text. I'll bring that up a little bit later. Gosh, there's so much I want to say. Also, this guy right here, Swami Sivananda Saraswati, he is the teacher of Satyananda, who is the teacher of the current author. Now, I was discussing how I personally reached a new level in my meditation when I was going through Chakra Shuddhi. And at that point, I kind of crossed a barrier and started getting some deeper stuff. And basically, what began to happen to me is that my inner vision got extremely more clarified. And as I meditated, now each and every time, I keep coming across visions and scenarios, right? Of, like I said, memories, childhood experiences, fantasies, things that I've forgotten about, things that are happening now and I'm seeing a deeper angle to, like certain people, certain motives that people may have, like real psychic stuff is going on. But I see that there's a temptation to break my meditation and quickly write it down, right? Oh, I got to write this down. It was a breakthrough, it was a download. As much as I want to do that, I have to remember, yo, this is actually about non-attachment. This is actually about staying focused, regardless of how painful the vision is or how beautiful it is. I got to finish the meditation. So I started doing some research on the different gods and goddesses, the devas and devis. That's what I've been doing lately, studying Durga, studying the triad of Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. Just getting some more information and clarity, because I'm starting to see now my depth of understanding is going to be limited to how well I understand the terms and phrases that are employed. Well, anyways, long story short, there's a really cool story about Shiva and his wife Sati at the time. And there was a battle that took place. But the important thing that I wanted to bring up right now is that Shiva came with an army. And the army was composed of these elementals, y'all. So yeah, elementals doesn't just come from Western magic. The elementals were present in the Vedic pantheon as well. And his particular, what they called the army was like the Bhuta something. But we know that Bhuta means the tattvas. Just like right here you see Pancha Mahabhuta. That means the 5 tattvas. So anyways, there are elementals. And when you reach a certain level, a certain stage of introspection, you encounter these elementals. And what do? They take the form. Check this out. These elementals take the form of fantasies, desires, and nightmares. So as I'm meditating, I've reached this new level where now I'm able to perceive these elementals. They're not dancing salamanders and sylphs and gnomes. They come in the form of my visions, right? Now check this out. When meditating in chakra shuddhi, at each chakra point, there's a specific type of visions that enter my mind. With each chakra point, it's associated with a specific element. The root chakra with the earth element, the swadhisthana with the water element, right? The manipura with the fire element. At each level, I had a different type of experience. This is related to those spirits. I'll post a screenshot of the article, or at least I'll give the website if anyone wants to see it. I can't do it while I'm on live, but yeah. When you reach a certain level of perception, those things will begin to appear to you as your visions. And what he said in his book was that the key to overcoming them is non-attachment. You must observe them and not react to them, and that's why they dissipate. But their whole job is to grab your attention. Because you can see them, they can see you now. And the whole point is to remain fixed in your meditation and not let them push you off the course. They had a name for this stuff. I didn't go looking for it. It appeared to me. That was really freaking cool. Shout out to Durga. 1212, Isis. But yeah, that's probably where we're going to be headed later on. A deep dive into the mythology of these entities. Then we'll be able to place them on the Tree of Life and really get a deep understanding for the archetypal level. Durgati Shamani. Okay, so we're almost to the end. The fourth Mahavakya, identification with the higher self. Ooh, interesting. Interessante. Greetings, Uppity Unicorn. When you are able to see everything as part of that transcendental reality, anchored in peace, bliss, and truth, then the fourth statement comes into play. Ayam Atma Brahma. This soul is the higher self. In this way, an identification is developed. The gross nature is transformed and transcended, and a higher nature, a higher identification is developed. So the gross nature is transformed, and it's transcended, and a higher identification is now developed. Learning is not enough. To conclude, I will tell you a story. In a certain village, there lived a donkey. He carried the washerman's load all day long, but at night he wandered as he pleased, raiding farms and drinking from streams. He met a horse who was also free to roam at night. Both became friends, and together they would graze at the lushest of farms while their owners were asleep. One night, standing in the middle of a farm field, the donkey said to the horse, "The night is lovely and the moon is full. I think I will sing. In which raga should I sing?" This is the donkey talking to the horse. Alarmed, the horse said, "Friend, hey, family, bruh, check it out, hey, don't get into trouble. The guards will wake up and beat us both." The donkey was in a different kind of mood. He said, "Oh, you don't know the joys of music. My heart wants to sing, so I must." "That may be so, brother," said the horse, "but your heart doesn't know your throat. You don't have any clue about music. You can only make noise, so why harm yourself?" "What? I don't know music," cried out the donkey. "I don't know music? Me, you talking to donkey over here." "I don't know music," cried out the donkey. "Then hear this. The elements of music are 185 as stated in the scriptures." Uh-oh, here we go. Now he's quoting what he memorized off of a YouTube video. The horse said, "Your scriptural knowledge cannot make you into a singer. But if you insist, sing as you please. I shall go somewhere else. Uppity Unicorn says, oh, hee-haw sounding ass. Literally. The horse said, your scriptural knowledge cannot make you into a singer. But if you insist, sing as you please. I shall go somewhere else. The horse left. The donkey squared his shoulders and started to bray at the moon. Hearing him, the guards came running out, caught him, and gave him a good thrashing. Yikes. Somehow he managed to free himself and ran as hard as he could away from the farm. Never again, said the donkey. I ain't coming back to this plane no more. I'm never incarnating again. That's what you say after you get your ass whooped, right? Or when you get a spanking as a kid. I'm never gonna spank my kids. Same thing. Never again, said the donkey when he finally stopped to catch his breath. And that was the end of his singing career. I ain't never gonna spank my kids. That's the same thing as saying I'm not incarnating on this plane again. Got that ass whooped. Now you mad. There's a better way. There's a better way. Donkey. The example of the poor donkey tells us that mere bookish knowledge cannot lead to true understanding or appropriate expression. On the contrary, it can land one in big trouble. To acquire perfection in any area, one needs to go through a process of training. What was that? On the contrary, let me go all the way back. Mere book knowledge cannot lead to true understanding or appropriate expression. On the contrary, it can land one in big trouble. To acquire perfection in any area, one needs to go through a process of training. One needs to become a sadhak, and this is especially true of the path of Jnana. I'm pretty sure it was W.E. Butler who said, a little bit of occult knowledge can be way more harmful than good. In the wrong mind, in the wrong head. Uppity Unicorn says, we all heard Eddie Murphy reading that donkey's lines. Yeah. Yeah. Don't get caught up. Don't get caught up. It's about understanding. Not knowledge. It's about understanding. Get the knowledge so that you can get understanding. And when those two unite, now you can have wisdom. I ain't never come back to this earth, this planet again. I ain't never incarnate. As if you decided. As if you were the sperm that said, you know what, let's go through this real quick. The sperm was performing its natural motor function, swimming towards that magnetized glow of the egg. If you find your spark of consciousness back in a sperm cell, you're going to do the same exact thing. But do you know how to avoid that process? Maybe you should study Yasod, or the etheric plane, and see what the relationship is between gaining a body and the etheric plane. Because that's where it happens. Gabriel got a body ready, waiting for you, hot and ready, fresh off the oven. Let's continue. What also comes through in the story is that advice from a friend, no matter how well meant, can hurt the ego, right? However, if the advice were from a source of inspiration, such as the guru, it would have a different effect. That sounds like some NLP right there. So, had the donkey been a sadhak who had a guru, the story might have had a different ending. He would not have given up. Instead, with the right training, combining inspiration and method of transformation, he could have become a perfect singer in the course of time. Time. Oh, I'm not good at meditating, Trav. I can't sit still. Practice. Oh, this magic don't work. I can't do it. Practice. Practice. And guess what? Sometimes you have the right advice, the right information coming to you. Sometimes we don't accept it because of who it's coming from. I had to overcome that in myself, because somebody that I might not think of as wise might have told me something wise, but I rejected it based on the mouth that it came out of. Maybe somebody I don't like or whatever. You got to understand this is deeper than just the people that you're talking to, right? The third Mahavakya was learning to see yourself in everyone and everything else. Sometimes spirit communicates to you through the easiest channel available. And if you miss it, that's because you have an ego problem going on. The horse told him something that was true and good. It was good advice. But the donkey couldn't accept it because he has little feelings hurt. Right? And he still got his butt whooped. Fiercely. So bad he said, I'm never coming back to this plane again. I bet you he came back too. Because he had to. Where else is the donkey going to go? He's a donkey. He can't fend for himself in the wild. I ain't getting no sleep because of y'all. You ain't getting sleep because of me. Shout out and praise to the great guru, Swami Sivananda. You could even meditate on this guy. All right. So we got one more chapter to go. The experience of Jnana. Is there a way that I can pull up that website without leaving this live stream? Let me see. There might be. No, there's not. Okay. Society Eject says you can post it in the comments. Perfect. That's what I'll do. I'll post it in the comments. It's just this little article on his website, or rather a website made around his teachings. And it just mentions those elemental spirits, which might be good for research on those of you who want to work with elemental spirits. Because remember in the last chapter we read on Netsack, and he was talking about the elemental spirits and how there are kings of those elemental spirits, and those kings are pretty much the most advanced of the elementals. They've learned, right? They've got knowledge and wisdom. They've consolidated it, and now they're teaching their legions. See, that's really what we're getting into when we talk about the kings of the Goetia and these different ranks of the Goetia. We're talking about their level of refinement, and their legions represent elementals who are being taught and trained by those particular Goetic spirits. There's a system to this stuff. There's a hierarchy to this stuff. But you're more than likely working with elemental spirits all the time. You just don't realize that's what it's called. And yeah, fairy spirits incarnate or are representative as those things as well. But honestly, it's through the elementals that a lot of our magical practice is performed. If you're interested in that, that would be a really cool subject to go into. One of the books that I showed recently talks about different ways to work with them. Where's that book at? I'd already put it away, but it's called Summoning Spirits by Konstantinos. Okie doke. So that was the end of chapter 3. And next week we're going to go over chapter 4. And that should wrap this book up. And then we're going to get into Samkhya Darshan. So please, if you've got this book, review your notes. really get into it. Then also, make sure you grab a copy of this, because that's where we're going next. Congratulations, because you've already read this, you've already read this, you've gone through this, you've gone through this, then we're going to tackle that. I'll figure out what we're going to do afterwards. But this is definitely what we're going to start in June. For real, for sure, for facts. Get ready. Get ready. Now, this right here, Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism, we're about halfway through with Volume 1. We're going to tap into Volume 2 afterwards. Volume 1 is all about the spheres. Volume 2 is all about the paths. Okay. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you spending time and getting your lesson. Good learning. Good information. All good. I don't know what to say about it. Have a good night. But yeah, I'll remember to post that website in the comments. It talks about those elementals. And as usual, be good to yourself. Love yourself. Try to see the world as clearly as possible. Try not to get distracted by the nonsense that's happening in the news and the drama that's happening amongst your friends and family. Stay focused, stay one-pointed, just like the book was talking about, right? It gave you so many different things to focus on as far as refining the mind and how to meditate, the process, right? The process of 1, stilling your body, 2, stilling the thoughts that are happening in the mind, and then 3, becoming the observer of what's happening. Then 4, as you become the observer, you can start the process of utilizing your discrimination and utilizing non-attachment. And when you utilize those things, once you've sliced away what is not useful, once you've sliced away what is not appropriate, now you can start to focus on the 4 mahavakyas, which are essentially pointing out the similarity and the difference between the individual and God, the individual and the cosmos, the individual and the ultimate consciousness. Now, you're not going to be able to do that effectively until you still the mind and still the body. Because if you try to do it without stilling your mind and without stilling the body, then all you're going to think about is your everyday, daily stuff, right? You're going to sit down in meditation. You're going to think about, what am I going to eat tonight? What so-and-so said earlier today. I'm going to meet up with so-and-so later on tonight. You're just going to think about the same stuff. It's going to circulate the same thoughts. You have to still the thoughts after you still the body. Then you have to observe what's going on. Once that process is done, that's the foundation. That's the beginning. Once you've got that, now we can start thinking about the higher advanced thought. Because here's the thing, even if you do manage to tap into higher thought, even if you do manage to do that, because you're still in the lower mind, you're going to misinterpret what you receive. So you're going to tap into Christ consciousness and then think that you are Jesus and you're here to save the world. That's not the case, because Christ consciousness always exists. Salvation is always imminent. It's always around the corner. That's what the book was teaching us. The New Testament was teaching us about the algorithm of Christ consciousness. But if you take it personally, if you attach to it and you say, oh, this is me, I'm supposed to do this, it's my duty to save mankind, that higher advanced thought has been corrupted because you poured it into an old mind. All right? So be careful, be deliberate, be aware, have discrimination when it comes to your practice. Have discrimination. It's the best way to go. Best way to go. Okay. So once again, Lily June says, who was summoning spirits by? The author is called Konstantinos, Konstaninos, Konstantinos with a K. He's written many books. This was a recommendation from Bobby Hemmett. So I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you again for spending time with me and learning this information. I hope that you're able to take it to heart and slowly start to tweak and adjust certain things about your process, because that's what I'm doing with this information, applying it. Alchemy Gold, I hope your situation rapidly improves as far as what you mentioned. And you too, Society Ejects. I hope that the beauty of the lesson is soon revealed. But thank you guys for coming out. Straight Panther, peace. We Grow Natural, peace. Lily June, peace. Up at Unicorn, peace. Sanaya Stewart, have a great night. Al Dickey, great to see you. I got that Malcolm X quote. Unstints, thanks for hanging out. Framestar Films, have a wonderful day, because it's daytime for you. Hecate, always good to see you. Love you. Will Trent, congratulations again, brother. Congratulations. Matthew Watson, have a great night. MC Maestro, peace, bro. All right. Peace, Gabriel. Peace, Ra. Did I miss anybody? Nuru, peace, peace. It's a good life. Be happy. Be happy. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to suffer. You don't have to. Every single day you can start making tweaks and improvements to improve your inner situation. And when that inner situation is improved, guess what? It starts to reflect on the outside. This is a good place to be. You become what you believe. You become what you believe. Trust. All right? So that's encouragement. That's love. That's wisdom and jnana and all that good stuff. Have an excellent night. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Peace.